It's time to gel. This blah, 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 blah. I heard the same thing last year. Now, let me say this. I have infinitely more trust in the head coach, Brian Callahan, of finding a way to adapt to a bad offensive line than I did under the previous coach, Mike Vrabel. I think it's pretty obvious Mike Vrabel had no clue when it came to the offensive line, just based off of his offensive line coaching hires, which also, as we're talking about infinite trust, I mean, when it comes to the trust I have for Brian Callahan compared to Mike Vrabel of getting it figured out, the trust I have between the bozos coaching the offensive line last year and Bill Callahan is more than that. It's hard to be more than infinity, but that's where I'll put myself. Ian, I'm going to put you on the spot here. I thought about giving you a heads up before I did this, but I think it's more fun this way.
Okay.
Do you remember the story? Because I feel like I've told this pretty regularly. Of my feelings after the third day of practice 2023.
Is that when you called your dad?
That is when I called my dad.
Okay.
Tell the people the story.
Well, I think you left one training camp practice and you called your dad and said, this O-line is going to be terrible.
They hadn't put the pads on. They hadn't had a snap of live action where they could hit the quarterback. They didn't have time to gel. They didn't, all the excuses. And I could tell after the third day. I could tell. It reminds me of 2021. The Titans had let go of Dennis Kelly at right tackle. They had signed Kendall Lamb. They had drafted Dylan Radins, and the two were going to compete at right tackle. And I watched Ola Adeni, basically a backup pass rusher and special teamer who wasn't even that good, just zoom off the edge by both guys over and over and over and over again. And I turned to Joe Rexrode at that 2021 practice, and I said, these guys suck. And he said, they haven't even put the pads on. A week later, both guys were off of right tackle, and David Quessenberry was in. Bad is bad, folks. On July 29th of 2023, 1 year ago today, at 11:44 a.m., I texted my best friend's dad. And remember, I am a Titans fan, so the way I talk on the air as an analyst, yeah, I'm a fan. Might be a little different than I talk off the air. I said at 11:44 a.m., they haven't put the pads on yet, but our offensive line is horrible. It was horrible. I knew after 3 days last year. So here's what I don't do. And again, Bill Callahan is different than Jason Hodeling, and hopefully that makes a difference this year. But what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to do let's ignore reality because I don't want to hear it. Because I think there's probably 95% of the fans out there that do want to hear Bill Callahan will get it fixed, or do want to hear they haven't even put the pads on. 2 years ago, we went out there to training camp, and I'm like, this is Aaron Burr. He looks like a little baby out there. And I told you guys Dylan Radin stunk. They haven't even put the pads on, Jared. Right. And by the time they did, it was too late to fix it, just like last year. Last year, you guys, they haven't put the pads on yet. I think it was Vrabel told Gentry asked this because I was complaining and we were talking, and Gentry asked Vrabel about, does it take longer for the offensive line to kind of get together and get going? And Vrabel, well, in my experience, it does. It takes time. We haven't even put the pads on. Yeah, Jared, we haven't put the pads on. And then they kicked off. And when they kicked off in September, and you had to watch that line in October and November and December, you knew what I saw the third day of practice last year. All offseason long, we agreed that the offensive line was the number one priority. And I'll give them credit. They signed the top center on the market, and they used the 7th overall pick on a tackle, albeit, unfortunately, and this isn't their fault, not the tackle that we all wanted, but they did use it on a tackle. The left guard was horrible last year, but he deserves a second chance given all of the forcoctedness around him with the two guys that stuck. They don't have a right tackle. Look at all the improvements we've made, Jared. This team's going to be awesome. They don't have a right tackle. And at first it was, well, it's only March. It's only March, Jared. Jared, they haven't even had the draft yet. Jared, other guys will get cut on June 1st. Jared, they haven't put the pads on. It's always a moving target to make an excuse for the fact that they don't have a right tackle. And once again, I've done that before. Last year, it was an unmitigated disaster. We knew in training camp Andre Dillard sucked. I remember Ben Arthur asking Vrabel about Andre Dillard, and Vrabel saying, well, he's the first one in here in the morning. He's working hard in the classroom. Yeah. And look, it's not apples to last year because Bill Callahan is coaching the offensive line. And it's not apples to apples either, I would assume, with Brian Callahan coaching, because I do think that Brian Callahan probably has a way to mitigate, the offensive line disasters that maybe the last coaching staff singling up Andre Dillard with Myles Garrett with 5 seconds left to go in the first half at Cleveland, probably for some reason, in spite of their high salaries, we're not aware of. But again, if we've learned anything over the last 2 years, it's that there is no way to overcome a bad offensive line. Joe Burrow could do it, but the Titans don't have Joe Burrow, and the Titans can't get Joe Burrow. Other than that, there's no way to overcome a bad offensive line. Once again, the highlight for me, it wasn't the fact that Tavondre Sweat would have had a sack. It wasn't the fact that I heard this guy was in the backfield. I saw people on Twitter saying, oh, the line, it wasn't. It was the note Kaharski made that Shane Ray, a guy who has not played football in 6 years, would have had 2 sacks. That's not a good sign. Bill Callahan is a great offensive line coach, maybe the best in the history of the NFL. I don't know. But the narrative is the exact same. The reality is the exact same 3 days into camp that it was last year. And last year, we tolerated some of the excuses. Why would I do the same thing again? I'll say it once, and I've said it many times in the past, and I'm going to say it one more time. They don't have a right tackle. And what they don't have a right tackle means is you can't win without a right tackle. 615-737-1025. That's our phone number. That's what we're starting off today. The offensive line has been, by all accounts, horrible through 3 days of practice. 615-737-1025. Then there was the one thing that I think everybody convinced themselves of. No data suggesting at any point you should have felt good about this. And yet people convinced themselves of it. And now, I think it might be a problem. We'll get to that coming up next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
I think we got to be better. We got to be firmer in protection. It's obviously hard without pads on. We're not really anchoring on guys. But I think we just got to execute better. I thought we missed a couple throws that we could have had. I know Will had a touchdown on a deep ball, and the ball slipped out of his hand, so that one wasn't any fun, but we had a shot. But yeah, it was good. We just a lot of things. We're 4 days in. We got plenty of stuff to work on, and, that's why we're practicing.
That was Brian Callahan at the practice at Nissan Stadium. Ian, did you hear what he said right there?
Yeah, it's still early.
Haven't put the pads on yet. We haven't put the pads on. That's what I was told last year. I was told last year we'd not put the pads on. So because we didn't put the pads on, Andre Dillard's crappiness was just a product of not wearing pads. And then Andre Dillard put the pads on and he still sucked. So there's one thing that really bothers me about what's gone on so far this season. And again, I'm not ruling out the fact that there is a chance that Bill Callahan will save all of this. I think there's a possibility. But I have told the right tackle story about 1,000 times. Quite frankly, I think I may have to do it again. Because, again, we're 3 days into training camp. And the right tackle that everybody told me I had to believe in, Nicholas Petit-Frere, a.k.a. PT, has not been on the field yet. And I keep going back to the start of the offseason. We all went into the offseason knowing that the Titans needed two starting tackles. Not one, two. Not one starting tackle, and let's fudge it at the other tackle, which I assumed was always going to happen. I thought that was going to happen when Vrabel was still the coach, and we were talking about the next offseason. But I never sat there and said that's a good idea. They needed two starting tackles. Brian Callahan's team that he came from, Cincinnati, went out and signed Trent Brown, a starting tackle, and drafted Amarius Mims. They also already had Orlando Brown Jr. They got 3 tackles. You got one, who you drafted at 7. I kept saying it. And then we looked at free agency, and there wasn't really a lot there. And then Brian Callahan went on the midday show at the Combine, and he said, I really, really like the traits that I've seen out of PT and Jalen Duncan. And I thought, oh, God. Oh, God. Oh, no. Oh, no. And then Brian Callahan said that Dylan Radins was going to play guard, even though over the last 2 years, the last 6 games or whatever it was of last season, Dylan Radins at right tackle is the best right tackle the Titans have had. Brian Callahan says Dylan Radins is going to play guard. And I thought, oh, no. But again, Bill Callahan. Bill Callahan's the guru. I understand. I got it. But they did not at all do anything at right tackle. And the more they didn't do anything at right tackle, didn't draft a right tackle, didn't sign a right tackle, kept adding, Scarbinis like Leroy Watson. But, I'm talking like a real tackle. The more they did that, the more you guys got stronger in your belief that PT could do it. You guys got on my ass about PT. I hear Joe Rexrode every time he talks about this. He claims that PT was good as a rookie. He was not good as a rookie. In fact, his rookie year was disappointing. And I said at the time, I go, you know what? I understand. I understand that maybe he had a bad rookie year, but they don't practice as much in the NFL. So I'm expecting a big jump in his second year. And if not, then he stinks. And then he got suspended for gambling. So he couldn't play the first 6 games or whatever it was last year. I think they ended up reducing it. But then he got hurt because TJ Watt's too fast off the edge at right tackle. And he was terrible when he did play last year for the 66 pass snaps or whatever it was. So you guys are like, no, he was good as a rookie. He was not. You guys are, Bill Callahan, you'll see. And then PT didn't participate in OTAs. And you guys, who cares? It's OTAs. Well, now he's on the PUP list. And Jalen Duncan, the other guy that Brian Callahan at the Combine was saying they felt good about, he's already been passed up by John Ojukwu, a second-year undrafted free agent who's played 66 snaps in his NFL career. And that might be your starting right tackle. This team does not have a right tackle. Ian, do I need to tell the story?
Please no.
I mean, I'm sorry. The story has to be told, because if you don't ever listen, and I'm not saying you, Ian.
You've already told the story to everybody who needs to hear it in the organization.
And so you're going to say they're just never going to listen to that?
Well, I mean, I don't know about never, but I think they're trying their best.
There's one general manager in the history of the Tennessee Titans, not the Titans Oilers, because Mike Halavac's on that wall too. But there is one general manager who was GM of the Titans, whose name is on the wall in the facility. When you go buy season tickets at Titan House, there is a giant gold record with his name on it, with the franchise record for wins as a GM. And the one time I asked him, I said, they're going to be any good in 2015. And he just looked at me and said, we don't have a right tackle. And from that moment on, I knew, you better have a right tackle if you want to be good in the NFL. Better have a right tackle. I thought maybe you could fudge right tackle up into that point. You cannot fudge right tackle. And yet, Nicholas Petit-Frere hadn't practiced yet. Bill Callahan today said he's going to be out there on Friday, hopefully. Okay. And then it'll be something else. Right. It was the gambling. Then it was the arm. Now it's the knee. Then it'll be the toenail. Then it'll be the Gatorade's not the right flavors. And you got to sit out that week too. It's the same thing. You can't rely on this guy. You don't have a right tackle. And so, again, I know they have not played a single snap of real football and will not play a single snap for 6 weeks. And there are going to be a lot of people out there that for the next 6 weeks will talk themselves into the fact that they'll figure it out. They'll figure it out. It's early, Jared. Jared, it's only March. Why are you worried about right tackle in March? Oh, Jared, they haven't even had the draft yet. Oh, Jared, there are other guys after the draft they can go out and sign. Oh, Jared, June 1st will come. There'll be tons of guys that'll be cut. They go sign somebody there. Oh, Jared, they haven't even put the pads on yet. I know. We went through all this last year. I mean, like, I went through this. I've experienced this. And so I think what's happened, and I don't know, because Bill Callahan's been the 3 times he's talked, it's been very monotone, matter of fact. I don't think he's blowing smoke, but it's almost like I don't think Bill Callahan realizes how unreliable Nicholas Petit-Frere actually is. And so while he says, we'll hope to get him back on Friday, I'm looking at this thinking to myself, yeah, and then it'll be something else. It'll be something else. I mean, it's only been a year and a half, and it's always something. So, I mean, again, I don't want to tell this story. I don't want to tell the right tackle story. But the crux of it is, if you don't have a right tackle, you can't win. And for the last 3 years, whether the general manager was John Robinson, whether the head coach was Mike Vrabel, Rand Carthon, Chad Brinker, Brian Callahan, Bill Callahan, it doesn't matter. This organization has tried to skimp at right tackle. And all I can say, and all I said then and all I'll say now, they don't have a right tackle. And if you don't have a right tackle, you're probably not going to win. And if you're banking on PT to show up and get off his ass and play some right tackle, I mean, you keep waiting. I mean, I believe in relying on guys that are reliable. I guess we'll see on Friday if they can get this right tackle that they claim is a legitimate starting right tackle that I don't have any real evidence that makes me believe that can actually play right tackle. 615-737-1025. Speaking of Bill Callahan, a.k.a. Ian.
Big coach. Bill
Callahan spoke today about the offensive line. We'll get to that coming up next, what he had to say, and your phones. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
I thought Saturday's practice in the stadium was really good for that atmosphere. It was very game-like for the players. They got a sense of, the crowd communicating in noise, being on their own away from, not having coaches behind them. So that was real beneficial.
That was Bill Callahan today saying, I'll tell you, I think that the noise in the stadium was very beneficial Saturday to what this offensive line is going to have to get used to. I mean, it looked like there might have been like 2,000 fans in the crowd. I mean, I'm going to tell you right now, when you go to Chicago on week 1 and every seat is sold for the coronation of what is supposed to be the first Bear quarterback to ever be worth a crap in 30 years, it's going to be a little bit louder, if I had to guess. But Bill Callahan was asked about Nicholas Petit-Frere today. This is audio comes from Paul Kaharski. Here is what Bill Callahan, a.k.a.
PT.
No, that's Petit-Frere. This is what he had to say.
Oh, big coach.
Bill Callahan, big coach. This is what he had to say about Nicholas Petit-Frere, a.k.a.
PT.
There you go. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was hoping he would be back. I think we're going to push his rehab back a little bit to Friday. Hopefully we can get him back and then accelerate from there. Back in Cleveland, I had a number of tackles that, started the year on PUP. So it's that situation where it's a fine line. He's getting all the classroom walkthrough type work, but he needs to get on the field and practice, which he'll get to. I'm not concerned about that. More importantly, it's getting him back into a groove where he can communicate and get into his pass sets and get that timing down.
Would you consider him at the head of the line at right tackle?
I don't know. In all honesty, fairness to everybody, I've reserved all my comments on the evaluation process until we've seen him in pads, seen him, obviously in a preseason game, and interact with them on the bench and see them make adjustments and see how they handle, the pressure of game day.
Bill, I've seen him. He stinks. And the problem with why you haven't seen him is because his availability is probably his weakest asset as an NFL player. To me, you don't get a pass for not being able to get out there because of the gambling suspension. That's a bad thing. But he's like, I'm not concerned. We were already hoping to have him back, but maybe we'll see Friday. Does he go to the front of the line? I don't know. That undrafted free agent, John Ojukwu, is out there. And I mean, he's got 66 career snaps. And so, maybe he won't. Oh, my God. Again, don't make me tell that right tackle story again. Phone line driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com, 615-737-1025. Alden in Nashville's Matt Ian.
What happened?
Alden says, We'll get most tired of Jared bitching about right tackle and telling the same Floyd story 1,000 times. That came at 7:09 a.m. from Alden, and then followed it up with, see my previous text, tuning off 102.5 for the day now. Jared says the same thing over and over. That comes from Alden. Alden, I wouldn't have to ever tell the right tackle story if the Titans went out and got a right tackle. I understand that I'm not in control of the Titans. I get that. I don't ever claim to be in control of the Titans. In fact, I think sometimes the Titans do the opposite of what I say because they hear me say it and think, oh, if Jared thinks it, then the opposite must be true. But at the same time, I wouldn't need to tell the story if the Titans went out and got a right tackle. There's also another Floyd story that sticks out in my head that I don't tell very often when it comes to the Titans. And it's a story of years ago. Remember Washington had Kirk Cousins on those 2 franchise tags, and they didn't really like Kirk Cousins. And the whole rumor was Kyle Shanahan, who had just taken over the 49ers, was obsessed with Kirk Cousins. And so coming out of the combine, Mike Silver, who is good buddies with Kyle Shanahan and at the time Jay Gruden, Mike Silver came out and said, I'm hearing there's some chatter that Washington and San Francisco might be working on a deal. In fact, Shanahan didn't do any homework on the quarterbacks in that draft class, which ended up being Mahomes, because he just thought they were going to sign Kirk Cousins at the year. And so there was this rumor that Washington and San Francisco were going to work out a deal for Kirk Cousins. And this was after the draft, or at least after the the combine, whatever. And I remember one of our suits over there at the station, Jeff Kolb, asked Floyd what he thought about it. Floyd just goes, well, who's Washington's quarterback going to be? It was like, well, maybe they, and that's the end of it. I.e., they may not like Kirk Cousins, but you got to have a quarterback, so they're not going to just trade away their quarterback and not have who's their quarterback? You can't not have a quarterback. But I don't tell that story very often. And the reason I don't tell that story very often is because over the last 5 years, 6 years, the Titans have had a quarterback. Mariota was a starting quarterback when he was the quarterback. Tannehill was a quarterback when they were the quarterback. Levis right now, he is the starting quarterback. So when it comes to telling the right tackles, don't be mad at me. Don't be mad at me. Be mad. Be mad at the Titans for not getting a right tackle. Kinston says, you've told the right tackle story 1,000 times, but failed to mention the Titans didn't have a right tackle in 2021 en route to a number 1 seed in the playoffs. That is true. And 2021, I think, was a really, really bad experiment for John Robinson. You see, what happens oftentimes, blackjack, I always talk about that. I'm a big blackjack player. You know, there's a certain way to play the game. If the dealer has a bust card showing a 6 or a 5 and you've got an 11, you double down because statistically it gives you the best chance for success. Well, I mean, there is the chance where you don't double down on 11 and you just hit it and you get a 4 and the dealer has a 5 underneath and then drops a 10 and now she's got 21. It happens. It sucks when it does, but it happens. Which means that every good decision may not yield a positive result. But if you make more good decisions over time, you will ultimately yield the positive outcomes. That's why even the best general managers bust on picks, because nobody's right all the time. But in 2020, Dennis Kelly, to me, while he wasn't really a true starter like Lewan or Conklin or Ben Jones or Lloyd Cushenberry, I mean, Dennis Kelly was good enough to start. And so I don't have a problem with Dennis Kelly at right tackle. In 2021, they went into the year with Kendall Lamb thinking he could start. He couldn't. With Dylan Radins, who they drafted in the second round, thinking maybe he could start. He couldn't. And then they quickly had to shift to Ty Sambrailo and David Quessenberry, and it ultimately ended up being Quessenberry. And Quessenberry was good enough to get by. He was the 5th guy on an offensive line. Now, he did start the year before at left tackle in place of Lewan, and I thought did pretty well. In fact, the Titans had the option to bring Quessenberry back on a right of first refusal RFA tender. It would have cost them $2 million. They didn't. He went into free agency after that year. But I think at that point in time, John Robinson, and maybe to a lesser extent Mike Vrabel, felt empowered that they could just wing it on the line. Like, we'll figure it out. We'll get rid of a Pro Bowl left guard, Roger Saffold, replace him with a 270-pound Aaron Brewer, and we'll be fine. We're smart enough to figure that out. And all it took was for one injury, and it was the knee to Lewan, in which Dennis Daly had to go in, and all of a sudden, your season's down the tubes. So, yeah, they got by for one season. They got by with a fringe-ish guy at right tackle when they had 4 other good players. They got by. And I think that empowered them to be stupid. And the result of that has basically been every single person involved losing their job. So, yeah, they got by with Quessenberry, and I think that, again, empowered them to, we could just put Aaron Brewer out there. It'll be fine. And now everybody's lost their jobs. Jason in Dover says, what is your solution and your suggestion on fixing right tackle? Get a time machine, go back to March, and take the $8 million you gave to Tony Pollard and give that to Jermaine Illuminor and put him at right tackle. That's my suggestion. Go back to March and call up the Ravens when they're looking to offload Morgan Moses and his 16 starts a year at right tackle and swap spots in the 4th round. It might cost you Cedric Gray. It might not. By the way, for all the people that thought Cedric Gray was going to come out right away and start and wear the green dot, doesn't look like that's going to happen, which I told you when they drafted him. You cannot bank on starting the 106th pick in the draft. You can bank on starting the 38th pick. You cannot bank on starting the 106th pick. If the guy becomes the linebacker version of Puka Nacua, great. But chances are he's probably not. But that's, again, you want me to fix it? Go back to March. So every time when I am sitting there telling you, like, I can't believe that this is happening. What's going on here? I mean, what are they doing right now? You're like, oh, what's Jared? It's only March. It's only March, Jared. Right. And that's when you have something you can do about it. That's why this new Giants Hard Knocks they had where it was kind of the offseason Hard Knocks, as opposed to what's going to happen with the Bears, which I am going to pay attention to because the Bears are playing the Titans that first week of the year. But that's just your traditional Hard Knocks. It's about the players, the coaches, the team, what they eat in the cafeteria, Ocho Cinco, child please, things like that. The Giants one was where they're literally sitting in the meeting rooms and they're talking about, do we want this guy at 10 million? Do we want this guy at 4 million? Hey, Shane Bowen, what do you think about Brian Burns if we add him? And of course, Shane Bowen is such a dope. He's like, he's got a big fat dip in his mouth. I'm like, if I'm Amy Adams Strunk, and that freaking bozo was my D coordinator, and Vrabel was like, no, just trust me on this, I think I'd have had a hard time with that. But that's when those decisions are made. Like, that's when you can fix problems. This time last year, Andre Dillard couldn't play a lick, and they couldn't fix it. It's too late. So when you ask me what my solution is, it's to go get a time machine. Good luck. But, I mean, it is what it is. Michael from Missouri says the right tackle story is not working. I agree that the right tackle is a problem, but if you're trying to convince the team, try something else. It's been every day for 2 years. Please come up with a different angle. What am I supposed to do? The day the coach got hired, I sat down with him. I'm like, you need a right tackle. The thing I don't understand why Bill Callahan, and I know what Trevor said about it, about Dylan Radunz's feet and about how he's not quick enough, in his opinion, to be a tackle in the NFL. I do not understand the decision right away to come in and just say Radunz is going to play guard. Because last year, for the last 6 weeks, we talked about Quessenberry and fudging it and getting by. I think Radunz got by last year at the end at right tackle, which is better than they've had for the last 2 years. And then immediately they come in and they're like, no, we're taking him off. We're moving him to guard. Again, Bill Callahan's the guru. He would know better than me, but oh my goodness.
Were there just too many holes on the offensive line to fill in one season?
No.
I
just told you, if you're going to use a third-round draft pick on a running back, that running back better start.
That was last year, right?
Right. So they used a third-round pick on a running back. And
they used a third-round pick on PT, and he didn't pan out either.
Right. But the difference is that this running back doesn't look like he sucks. Like, this running back, they were willing to trade Derrick Henry, allegedly, until ownership said no, allegedly, which, again, I don't even know what to believe on this, because I have heard some stuff that makes it sound like Rand might be telling the truth. But at the same time, I don't know. But again, if they were willing to trade Henry, or when you draft a running back in the third round, I mean, that guy better start, because it's running back. Right tackle is a premium position. Running back is not. And so I look at Illuminor, who went for like $7 million to the Giants, and I'm like, take the $8 million you gave your second running back and give it to the right tackle. Because you can get an undrafted free agent to play running back, and it won't be the end of the world. We saw that when Derrick Henry went down and Deontay Foreman came in and ran the ball. But you can't get by with Scarbini's at right tackle, and you know that. One texter says, we have new coaches and coordinators and a lot of new players. What you're really expecting for the first week of training camp. And I've been reading everything else about camp, and you're the only one freaking out. I know, and I was the only one freaking out last year when Andre Dillard couldn't get a stop in the first week of training camp. And what they told me was, no, just wait till they put the pads on. So what are they telling me now? Oh, no, just wait till they put the pads on. Well, if I had a concern last year, and the excuse for validating the concern was they haven't put the pads on, and I accepted it, and then the offensive line was as bad as it was last year, And then it's the exact same problem, and the excuse is the exact same excuse. Wouldn't I be an idiot to sit there and say, oh, okay, it's okay, put the pads on? Like, wouldn't I be a moron for that? Woo! 615-737-102. Fast forward to the season, if they got Jermaine Illuminor and he sucked, you'd be really mad. I mean, I can't tell you what I would think about something that hasn't happened yet. And again, Illuminor gave up like 4 sacks last year. I can live with 4 sacks. Coming up next, a lot of people have texted in saying, Jared, what do you think about the Danico Autry suspension? We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. You said it feels kind of the same, even though Danico's not here anymore. What is kind of filling that void from a production standpoint? How do you go about filling somebody that provided as much as he did over the years?
It started yesterday. I mean, our job is to not focus on guys who we lost, but the guys who we got this year. And one thing about this league is prove and reprove. Every year you can prove who you are, but at the end of the day, you got to reprove it. And that's the mentality I'm taking. I'm into this season, and the guys who we got this year, even with the new addition, I always say, them guys got to prove that they can rush the passer and affect the game like we had in the past with Danico. But at the end of the day, we don't have Danico no more. We got new faces, and I mean, quite frankly, we got a lot of guys from last year that rush inside, even guys like Arden who had inside rushers. But I got full confidence in the guys we have right now. I'm not speaking on them no more the past. Like I said, I'm focused on the guys we have in the building, and the biggest thing is, like I said, my job is to continue to help the guys around me improve, and I improve every day I come on the field. So
that was Jeffrey Simmons last week. If you listen to the show a lot, and most of the text line does because you're all mad about me complaining about the offensive line, but if you listen to the show a lot, outside of right tackle, one of my biggest concerns, Danico Autry's 11.5 sacks, just walked out the building during free agency and went to the Houston Texans. And today, a bomb was dropped that Danico Autry has been suspended for 6 games for violating the performance-enhancing drug policy in the NFL. Ian, did you see Danico Autry's lengthy statement and or explanation?
I saw he put it out there, yeah.
By the way, do you believe players whenever they come out with an explanation for why they got caught cheating?
That's a good question. I don't know how many athletes would knowingly do that at this point.
So do you think when Taylor Lewan was all like, I didn't take PEDs and I took my supplements to the lab and had them tested and I didn't do it, do you think that was the truth? Or do you think the truth was Lewan was trying to get an edge, he took a little juicy juice, and next thing you know, it's not 100% juice for 100% kids, and he's out for 6 games?
Probably the second.
Okay. So I genuinely do not believe the players. And I'm sure there are some players out there that get duped. I'm sure there are some players that are working out somewhere with one other guy, and he's like, yeah, dude, hey, take this protein powder. And I'm sure it's more than protein powder that's in, it's probably not a protein powder. It's probably more something else. But, take this right here. But no, I do not believe that Barry Bonds thought that the cream and the clear were for acne. I do not think that Roger Clemens thought he was getting shot with B12 in his buttocks. I don't believe it. I talked about it with Nick Swisher when he came on the show last week, the former World Series champion. I said, the reason why we're cool with David Ortiz and Andy Pettit is because they put their hands up and said, yeah, I did it. So Danico's lengthy statement basically is that his doctor screwed up. According to this, I immediately investigated the matter and discovered that a pharmacy to which my doctor submitted a prescription for a different medication had, whether intentionally, recklessly, or negligently, included a banned substance. I want to be clear, at no time did I know or even suspect that this medication contained a banned substance. The league has basically decided that regardless of what your excuse is, you're responsible for what's in your body or what's not. I have a little bit of sympathy because it's like, if you ever gone to the hospital, they say, hey, take this, and then you take it, and maybe, you're not allowed to play sports now because you did that. I don't know. I'm not sure I totally believe Autry. Autry did come off of a major injury in 2022. He was in a contract year in 2023. Even as he ages, he seems to be a model of consistency. You know what helps you get better as you get older? The juice. Which makes me wonder something. I've been very critical of the Titans front office. And I don't think that big picture this really matters. I mean, Danico Autry's still going to play, and he's still going to sack the quarterback after the first 6 games. But I wonder if the Titans knew something that maybe the Texans and the rest of the league didn't. When you're around somebody every day, they're in your building, you know the good and the bad. Very rarely are teams surprised by actions of guys that they've been around for 4 or 5 years. In the case of Autry, it was 3 years. Now, I'm not in that building every day. I'm not on that team, so I couldn't tell you. But there are signs of guys that juice. I've seen it myself. So I do wonder if the Titans, when it came to re-signing Danico Autry, saw the 11.5 sacks and thought to themselves, well, eventually this is going to be a problem. I'm not saying they know. I'm not saying Danico lied. I'm just saying I don't believe Danico because I don't believe any player when they come out and say, I did not knowingly take this banned substance. Some of these dudes are cheating. Now, I'm sure it's happened to some of them where they didn't know that they were taking something or they were too stupid to get it checked or whatever. But in the case of most players, I just have to assume that you're cheating because every excuse has been the same since we started for testing back in 2004 or whatever it is, which is, I did not know that cough syrup contained that which I was not allowed to do. So, again, my one take on this is I don't think it really affects football that much. I mean, I still think that while the Texans won't have Danico for the first 6 games, and I don't know what their first 6 games look like, they'll have him when it really matters. Like, they'll have him and he'll be fine in November and December and January, and if they get to February, he'll be fine. But I do wonder if this is a reason why he's not back. Now, the money to me was the reason why that, hey, $11 million a year, good for you. But I'm not sure that I could pay that. And that frustrated me that the Titans didn't extend him. But if the Titans knew in their heads, like, hey, man, this guy, he knows the syringe all too well. If that's the case, then you got to make a decision. And maybe that is why the Titans decided to move on. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Will Levis got a girlfriend. Ian, did you see that?
I saw a little bit of the scuttlebutt on Twitter.
So I have one opinion, and it will be my prevailing opinion throughout. We'll get to that next. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106 for the game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. Will Levis has a brand new girlfriend, apparently.
Good for him.
Good for him. I will say this. I mean, everybody remembers draft night and his girlfriend on draft night, and she kind of stole the show as he was stuck in the green room and everything else. And then I remember last year, I want to say it was like a Tuesday or a Wednesday, or it was some night. Pardon My Take, the Barstool podcast, had this graphic of Will Levis, and it just said single on it. And it was like, Pardon My Take is breaking the news. The Titans rookie quarterback Will Levis is now single. And I couldn't stop laughing because the graphic had Levis like looking all serious, and it just said single. I don't know if you guys have seen the when Sam Darnold had mono when he was the quarterback of the Jets. ESPN had a graphic in which it was like out indefinitely, mononucleosis, and it was Sam Darnold like pointing at the camera like being tough, where it said he was out indefinitely for mono. That's kind of what that Levis graphic last year showed me. But let me say this about Levis's new girlfriend. Apparently, she's from The Bachelor. I don't know. I don't watch. Will Levis's personal life will always be a big deal. And here's why. Number one, he plays quarterback. Number two, he's a good-looking dude. And thus, people care about that stuff. You know, I'm not sure a lot of people are interested in who Lamar Jackson is dating. Because, you know, Lamar Jackson doesn't have that. I am Johnny good-looking out here, and I am just here to pick up all the chicks. And yet I do kind of feel like Will Levis has that vibe. I think that's part of the reason why a lot of people don't like Will Levis, because they're jealous. Because who wouldn't want to be 6'4" and absolutely yoked? Well, play quarterback. I mean, it's pretty cool, right? Also, he's not married. And when you're not married, that means that you're 25 years old, which he is. You know, drama, excitement, yes. So people are going to care about that. Once you get married, you have kids, unless you're having like a wildly public affair, nobody cares. That's why nobody cared about Ryan Tannehill. Ryan Tannehill was married, had 2 kids, you know, it was whatever. All these quarterbacks have good-looking wives. Some of them are famous, some of them are not. All the quarterbacks are 6'4". They're all cut to a certain extent. And women like that, especially when your salary is around $50 million a year and an entire stadium of people is chanting your name and wearing your jersey. It's very attractive to women. I don't know if you guys understand that. And I don't care about that. And I don't care about Will Levis and his girlfriend and the fact that she has a podcast and the fact that she's famous and the fact that she's on The Bachelor. Now, Caroline texted me earlier today, and apparently this girl's like, I guess her public persona, I don't know her, but her public persona, according to Caroline, is she's a little cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. But I don't know that about her. I don't know anything. I don't even know her name other than she's on The Bachelor. I don't care about any of this. What I care about is that Will Levis, for the last 2 years, since he's really been a Titan, he's had a lot of drama in his personal life, right? He had the draft night and the girlfriend, and remember Rich Gannon, who we love Rich, but Rich said like, hey man, you got too many good looking women with you. Your mom and your sister and your girlfriend. You're like Joe Namath trying to be Don Juan back there. I mean, this is how far back this goes. Then there was the girlfriend, then it was the breakup, then it was, you know, there was a lot of internet scuttlebutt about that. Then after they broke up this summer, there was some scuttlebutt. And yet, at no point has it seemed to me like any of that drama has affected his focus as a professional football player. And that's all I care about. I don't care if you go date somebody from Mars. I don't care if you're dating the most famous person in the history of the world. If you're my relief pitcher, I need you to go get 3 outs. That's all I care about. I don't care if you're dating a politician. I don't care. I wouldn't care if Will Levis was dating a man. Now, I know there are a lot of you out there that would care about that, and that's your business, but I wouldn't care. As long as you play football and play it well, that's all that matters to me. Now, if all of a sudden this starts to become an issue, and now, again, apparently she's got some podcast or something, and she starts going on the podcast, and she starts talking about the fact that the Titans ignored right tackle this offseason, it's getting her boyfriend killed, then we're going to have problems, because that becomes an issue for the team. When Tannehill was in Miami, they had a defensive back. I forget his name. Was it Brent Grimes? Was that the name of the I want to say
Sounds
that
about
was
right. Yeah.
His wife was like a morning DJ on the radio in Miami. And she just bitched about Tannehill. Well, now that becomes a problem. And it's not the corner's fault, it's his wife. But again, if she wasn't married to you, her opinions wouldn't matter about this. So it's a whole thing, right? As long as that doesn't happen, I don't care who Will Levis dates. And you shouldn't either. We all have personal lives. We all have things in our personal lives we're not proud of. We all have things in our personal lives we are proud of. So, I mean, he can do whatever he wants, but don't let it affect the football. I really believe that when PK Subban started dating Lindsey Vonn, I think it affected him as an athlete. I think there was some scuttlebutt that came out of that building after he left. That was, we don't know if PK was really dedicated to the game at the end. That's what I heard. I think that you could tell based on his play that it declined rapidly after he was with Lindsey Vonn. And remember how big of a deal it was that PK Subban was dating Lindsey Vonn. It was the story every day. Oh, Lindsey Vonn had an Instagram story of PK Subban snoring, and all of a sudden, that took off, and that doesn't bother me, but it does bother me if you're not working out as much because you're spending your off seasons traveling around with Lindsey Vonn. On the other hand, Mike Fisher was married to Carrie Underwood, and it didn't affect his play at all. And that's why I never cared that he was married to Carrie Underwood, because it doesn't matter. And as far as having, again, going back to Caroline, saying that this girl that Will Levis is dating is apparently cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. And again, that's her public persona. I don't know, what she's like as a person, and I don't care. That's not my business. But I would assume that if she's cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs on The Bachelor, that's probably not what she's like in real life, if I had to guess. But even going back to that, you think Tom Brady hasn't had drama in his personal life? With Giselle and Bridget, and had a kid with Bridget while he was dating Giselle, and then he had 2 kids with Giselle, and then all of a sudden he and Giselle broke up. And the only thing that bothered me about Tom Brady's relationships over the years didn't affect him really on the football field much, but the one thing that did bother me was when they came to practice here, when he was with Tampa Bay, and he wasn't there, took an 11-day break because he was working out his divorce. I wanted to watch Tom Brady play football. Come on. And I think it hurt the Bucs that season. Not that I thought Brady was the problem on that team, but I think that hurt the Bucs because you can't play football half in. But there has been nothing that I have seen from Will Levis that would make me think that even if he was dating, I'm trying to think of like the wildest and craziest woman that he could date, even if he was dating somebody who was completely off the rails, that it would affect his career, affect the team. That's all I care about. And that's really how I feel 99% of the time about most people and their jobs. If we're doing something professionally, I care that you do the job. You're a doctor, and I go to the hospital, and I need you to look at something. I don't care what's going on between you and your wife. That's your business. So when it comes to Will Levis and dating somebody famous, and the internet, I think, is going to absolutely, just be so overly just magnified on this Will Levis dating somebody famous. As long as it doesn't affect his play, I don't care. You think Aaron Rodgers hasn't had personal life drama over the years? Of course he has. Has it affected him as a quarterback? The Olivia Munn stuff didn't, but all the crazy ayahuasca stuff, maybe that does. And if it does, then I care. If it doesn't, then I don't. And that's how I feel about Levis. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Kyle has been waiting patiently, wants to get in here on the program. Kyle, thank you. Go ahead.
We're talking Cocoa Puffs, man. That's my language right there. I hope she does affect his game.
Okay, all I heard Kyle say, and I appreciate his call, all I heard was that he said that he hopes she does affect his game. I don't. Because I'm sure, and again, I don't want to speak for Kyle, but I'm going to have to with that lousy phone connection. I'm going to assume. But he's like, I hope this affects his game in a positive way. Well, relationships come and go. And something I think I've learned, and it took me a long time to learn this in my life, is relationships are two-way streets. And sometimes when you're in a relationship, there's control that you don't have. And so if he ends up playing better because he's dating this girl, and then she pulls the rug out from under him, then what? So again, I hope it doesn't mean anything for him as a player. I hope it doesn't mean anything for his focus. Bad days are going to happen in your personal life. Bad days happen in my personal life. But when you get in your car after you've worked all day and you tune into the radio program, do you care if I'm having a bad day? I'd like to believe some of you do, but for the most part, you don't. And that's how I feel about this. And it's hard to do because we're all human beings, including the quarterback. But we also all have jobs to do. And so I hope it doesn't have an effect. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. That's the only time I'm going to talk about this unless it becomes a problem. That's the only time. And I don't think it will. Coming up next, Tua got his contract. We already complained about that. Jordan Love got his contract. We have not complained about that. But a lot of people want to know. A lot of people want to know, how does this affect Will Levis? We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Let's talk about White Bison. That's right. White Bison, they are the best. They're your local coffee shop. They're my local coffee shop. And they've got specialty coffee and so much more. Again, don't go somewhere where the line's going to be all the way through the door. No. Go somewhere where you can just download your app and you can order ahead and you can join the rewards program and everything else. Explore the selection of premium coffee blends, refreshing iced drinks, and food featuring fresh-made premium breakfast, lunch, and snack options. And download that app to join the White Bison Rewards program, where you can place orders on the go anytime, get rewards, and earn free coffee. Stop by White Bison and brighten your day with a sweet cinnamon beehive latte, an iced honey nut macchiato, or the vanilla rooibos tea latte. Find your perfect cup at White Bison, where it's finely crafted for you every day. White Bison and twice daily. That's twice daily.
The deal that the Miami Dolphins and Tua Tagovailoa have been trying to work out has been agreed to. A 4-year, $212.4 million extension, $167 million in guaranteed money, and that makes Tua's average annual salary $53.1 million per year. Do you know what Dan Marino's career earnings with the Dolphins were? $51 million. Tua beats that on average in a single year. But this was the deal that they've been trying to get done. Tua really didn't practice the first 2 days, and the sign that something was up may have come earlier today when Tua was a full participant in practice, and a short time later, the richest deal in Dolphins franchise history is agreed to. Tua and the Dolphins get their agreement done.
Okay, Tua signed on Friday. Then Friday night, I don't know, Ian, if it makes you uncomfortable when I talk about this, but I had a gum drop, the legal ones. I had a gun drop on Friday night and saw the Jordan Love contract and was like, whoa, $55 million a year for Jordan Love. Now, doing the whole APY thing is not, Mike Florio has a really good article about this at Pro Football Talk. Mahomes' APY is supposedly less than these other guys. And over the next 4 years, the guy who's going to end up getting the most cash out of the group is Mahomes, even though his number is technically per year a lot less. Like over the next 4 years, Mahomes is going to get $200 million in cash, and Trevor Lawrence is going to get like $115. So I don't totally understand it, but again, the thing that the agents love and TV loves and we love, it's the per year, and Jordan Love got $55 million. And so a lot of people are going to ask this question. What does this mean for Will Levis? The truth is, it doesn't really mean anything unless you let it. With quarterbacks in the NFL, some teams rush to sign their quarterback, like Jacksonville, because they feel like they have to. Sometimes owners want to get deals done. GMs want to get deals done. Coaches want to get they want to get a deal done because they want to justify the opinion that they had to select that quarterback in the first place. Jacksonville, again, they probably jumped the gun a little bit on Trevor Lawrence. Jacksonville can argue that, well, he'll be $65 million if we waited a year. And on top of it, they just went and asked the public for a boatload of money for a new stadium, and they got it. And so I think you want to sign the quarterback to show that you're invested in the team and everything else so that the constituents want to give you their money. So it's more of a business deal maybe than it was a football deal, but I understand it. The reality check, though, just because other teams rush to sign their quarterbacks doesn't mean you have to do that. In fact, I'm a firm believer that if you do what everybody else does, you'll end up like everybody else. See, I'm still of the belief that you'll know at that position, you'll know. Just like we knew, I was the biggest Mariota guy. I wanted Mariota to be a franchise quarterback. I loved Mariota. I thought Mariota had been totally screwed over by the organization with the bad coaching and Kim Wisenhunt and the coaching changes and Matt LaFleur and Derrick Henry on the bench. And I thought Mariota had been screwed over. I wanted Mariota to be the guy. But when I watched that Denver game and I saw those throws not being completed within a 9-yard radius of where they were supposed to go, I knew. At no point, even though I was one of the biggest Marcus guys there was, at no point through that process did I think they should have given him a contract extension. I thought they were right to pick up the 5th-year option. I thought they were right to go into the 19 season without giving him an extension, saying this is a prove-it year for him. And ultimately, he proved that he was not the guy. And I was fine with that. Because you don't have to make a decision, so don't force yourself to make a decision. In the case of Miami and Green Bay, they think they've already made the decision. They think they've got franchise quarterbacks. Now, I do not think that the Dolphins have a franchise quarterback in Tua, and I'm not completely sold that the Packers have a franchise quarterback in Jordan Love either. I'd rather pay Jordan Love than pay Tua because I know in my heart that Tua is not a franchise quarterback. I know Tua does not beat good teams. He cannot beat playoff teams. He cannot win in the playoffs, and he cannot go on the road and go to Buffalo, go to Kansas City, go to Baltimore, go somewhere where it's cold and beat those quarterbacks. I know it. So I wouldn't do it. With Jordan Love, I don't know that. Jordan Love got better throughout the course of the year last year, went to Dallas, beat them, went to San Francisco, played great against them. I understand it. Now, I probably wouldn't have given him the contract. I probably would have told Jordan Love, like, hey, man, we need to see what you did last year. We need to see that this year. And instead of you getting $55 million, because by the time we're ready to give you the contract, Dak will have signed a new contract. Tua will have signed a new contract. Maybe Brock Purdy will sign a new contract. So it might be $60 million for you. It might be $62 million for you. But we're going to make you do it again. Because this is what I love about this league. This is what I love about the razor-thin margins in this league. And that is that the Green Bay Packers were 6-8 last year. And we've talked about this 100 times. But they were lucky enough to draw Carolina and beat them by 3. And all of a sudden, they got hot. They went to Dallas. They smoked Dallas. And I believe that had more to do with Dallas and McCarthy and Dak than it had to do with Green Bay, but more power to them. And if they could kick a field goal, they might have been in the Super Bowl, which you got to give credit to. But at 6-8, the general manager had already come out earlier in the year and said, these next 10 games are important games for Jordan Love. He told you midway through last year, he didn't know if they had the guy. So at 6-8, they drew Carolina. If they drew somebody good and lost, there's a pretty good chance that Jordan Love is the backup right now or the bridge quarterback to J.J. McCarthy or Bo Nix, or I don't think the Packers were too far away from looking for a new quarterback. But again, beat Carolina by 3, take it week by week. All of a sudden, you're in the division round of the playoffs, and now you're worth $220 million. So to, again, go back to the point of what does this have to do with Will Levis? It doesn't have anything to do with Will Levis unless you decide that you have to extend your quarterback for some artificial reason that pops into your brain other than knowing that he's the guy. Buffalo knew Josh Allen was the guy after year 3. Why? He had made the Pro Bowl in the AFC. They had gone to the AFC title game. He had thrown 37 touchdown passes. He was averaging about 8 yards an attempt. He was the guy. They knew. Give him the contract. Kansas City knew Mahomes was the guy after 4 weeks. You can go ahead and give that guy the contract. By the time he was eligible for a contract, he already won a Super Bowl. Give him the deal. So I know a lot of teams are afraid of, well, if we don't have a quarterback, if we go the bridge route, if we do I'll be okay with it. So if you're the Titans and you feel like you have to be like everybody else, and you feel like the second that you can extend a mediocre quarterback because you tell yourself that he's our Joe Burrow, well, that's your fault. But I still believe the Titans would be right to take the same approach they took with Mariota, which was, we hope, but we'll see. And make Levis prove he's the guy. And at that point, whatever the going rate is, that's what he'll get. And that's just the league. But this idea that like those contracts have anything to do with your quarterback, no. Not unless you let it. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025 if you want to weigh in. So I'm sure some people will say, Jared, how will we know if Will Levis is the guy? Well, let's touch on that and get to your phones. We'll do it next. 615-737-1025 is our phone number here on the program. The Game Summer Ticket Tour is presented by Green River Whiskey, and it's got 2 more tour stops left. Join Joe Dubin at Burrow Bourbon and Brews at 124 North Maple Street in Murfreesboro this Thursday from 4 to 6. He will have your chance to win free tickets to upcoming concerts in Nashville, including Bush, Train, Dierks Bentley, and more. Also get signed up for the grand prize, tickets to a Preds home game, Sounds game, and the Big Machine Music City Grand Prix. For more details, visit theGameNashville.com/tour. Green River Distilling Company, Owensboro, Kentucky. Alcohol by volume varies by product. Please drink responsibly.
If you had to bet right now, he is going to be the quarterback of this franchise when they open the new stadium, or he is not, you have to bet one way or the other. Which way are you guys going?
Well, I'll give odds. How about?
No.
I'll give odds.
No, it's money line. You have to bet yes or no, period. No odds.
I give him a 60% chance of being.
No, you have to bet your house. Yes or no.
I don't bet my house.
Dude, don't do this. TD, will you please indulge my question? God, Kaharski. So
I mean, I'm straddling the fence with that one, but to give you some classroom participation, I will go ahead and I would say yes.
Thank you.
But not because I think he's going to be a top 5 passer. I would say yes because nowadays, even if you're, top 10, top 15, like, remember, this organization paid Ryan Tannehill $100 million, right? So I think he's going to it's likely that he puts them in a situation where they're like, okay, we're looking like the Jacksonville Jaguars with Trevor Lawrence, as far as, like, I don't know that we're going to find something better. We could possibly, but I don't know that we're going to find something better, so let's go ahead and pay him. I think that's going to be the situation.
That was TD and Paul, who didn't want to participate about a couple weeks ago with Joe, and I thought that was really apropos because, again, I think there's a lot of questions. Somebody texts in the text line and says, I think Levis will be the guy, Jared, and I think that we'll remember this chat 2 years from now when the Titans do pay Will Levis. I mean, I hope. But there's kind of a question, right? How will we know that Will Levis is the guy? And I want to go back to, it's easy when you've got Joe Burrow, right? Like, I see people on Twitter say things now like, well, Joe Burrow, or I guess the text line, Joe Burrow hasn't won the big one yet. He got really damn close with a team that probably didn't belong there. He's the one guy in the sport who can consistently compete with Patrick Mahomes. The other guy who can beat Mahomes doesn't even play football anymore. That's Brady. Everybody else, they can't beat Mahomes. Aiden O'Connell might sneak one out here or there. Ryan Tannehill beat him once. Actually beat him twice. But he's not beating Mahomes consistently. Burrow is. So when you've got Burrow, or you've got Allen, or even Lamar, I'm not the biggest Lamar fan. Don't know if Lamar's going to be able to win in the playoffs or not when he has to throw against these guys. But at the end of the day, if Lamar Jackson was my quarterback, I'd give him the going rate contract, the $200 million. Yes. I look at Miami and Green Bay and even Dallas, who has a decision to make on Dak. And let's throw Jacksonville in here with Trevor Lawrence, because I've talked to Jacksonville about this. We had Tony Khan on the show. His dad owns the team. He's the chief strategist, i.e., he's the heir to the team. And he told us, we wanted to pay Trevor Lawrence. We think he's the best young quarterback in the NFL. I disagree with that, but that's what they think. In all four cases, can you win a Super Bowl with Trevor Lawrence, Tua, Jordan Love, or Dak? With Trevor, and Trevor's still really young, I'll say the jury is out, but I'm leaning more no. Tua is a no. Jordan Love is we just need more information. And with Dak, I think Dak is kind of the line in the sand where I really don't think you can win the Super Bowl with Dak Prescott as your quarterback. I think too often when Dallas loses in the playoffs, it's because they need Dak to make the difference, and Dak can't do it. If you compare the rosters between Kansas City and San Francisco, the two teams that played in the Super Bowl last year, top to bottom, Ian, top to bottom, who's got a better roster, Kansas City, San Francisco?
If you're going to go overall, I guess San Francisco.
I don't even think it's close.
Yeah, but Kansas City just might have the better players at key positions.
To me, last year, Kansas City was built on four players: Mahomes, Kelsey, Jones, Snead.
Mm-hmm.
Now, sure, other guys matter. Nick Bolton, their inside linebackers, very good player. That matters. Karlaftis, McDuffie, those guys are good players. Rashee Rice, when he's not going crazy, he provided them a little punch on offense. But it was really the four players.
Pacheco's not terrible.
Pacheco's not bad at all. But it's really the four players. Whereas if you look at San Francisco's team, it's like they've got the best of everything at almost every position. Trent Williams, Kittle, Debo, Ayuk, Christian McCaffrey. They even have the best fullback in the league in Kyle Juszczyk.
Linebackers.
Warner and Greenlaw, Bosa. They're good everywhere. They're good at every position. And yet, Kansas City can still win because they got the guy. That's the difference. If you've got that guy, if Levis becomes that guy, we'll know. This won't even be a discussion. But the question is, what if Levis doesn't? What if Levis becomes like Tua, becomes like Jordan Love, becomes like Dak, where there are enough W's under the belt to justify keeping the quarterback, but there's really nothing there that says you can win because of that guy. Last year, Patrick Mahomes was the league MVP. Ian, do you know who finished number 2?
Was it Lamar?
Dak Prescott.
Okay, I could buy that.
Dak Prescott was number 2. The difference? Dak can't beat San Francisco. Mahomes can. Dak can't beat those teams. He's not a force multiplier. I think that's the reason why Jerry, I think it's one of the reasons why Jerry has not given Dak a new contract. The other being that Jerry's cheap. But I think that it's partly because deep down in his heart, he sat there in that box in that Green Bay playoff game, and he watched Dak and Mike McCarthy poop their pants on national TV and thought, I can't win with him. I can't do it. We can get close, but we're never going to get close enough. And I think Jerry knows that. I mean, I'll even do this. Ian, Kansas City, Dallas, top to bottom, who has a better roster?
That's a good question. That's pretty good. Dallas, I don't know, maybe Dallas.
I think Dallas does too.
Maybe, yeah.
But if they played, who would you pick?
Yeah, I'd pick Kansas City.
Every time.
Yeah.
And so that's the question for the Titans and for everybody else, which is, how do you view that quarterback purgatory? Do you view it as a, let's move off of Alex Smith to try to do better? Let's move off of Tyrod Taylor. Buffalo got to the playoffs for the first time since the Music City Miracle in 2017. And they said, let's move off Tyrod Taylor. Let's go get our own guy. And it became Josh Allen. Do you do that? A lot of teams are scared to do that. And the reason why these teams are scared to do it is because if you make that mistake, if you do it and you fail, you're fired. A lot of teams are afraid of that. You know, for Green Bay, I think part of the reason why they gave Jordan Love the contract is because they view their identity kind of like the Steelers extending Mike Tomlin's contract, when it kind of feels deep down inside like maybe it's time for them to move on and get some fresh blood in the organization. But their identity for the Steelers is we don't fire coaches. The identity for the Packers is that we go from one quarterback to the next guy. So they want to believe that Love is the next guy, so they just give him the contract, whereas I probably would like to see a little bit more from Jordan Love before feeling comfortable about giving him that contract. The one thing I will say is, for the most part, the teams that weren't sure at quarterback and decided to move on, I'd say really aren't missing that much. Washington wasn't sure about Kirk Cousins. They moved on. Now, Washington hasn't done very well, but I'll ask you this. How good's Kirk Cousins? Tampa wasn't sure about Jameis Winston. They moved on. They won a Super Bowl. Chicago wasn't sure about Justin Fields. They've moved on. I think they probably made the right choice. Tennessee wasn't sure about Marcus. They moved on. Cleveland wasn't sure about Baker Mayfield. Now, they failed themselves on the Deshaun thing. Like, that was just stupid. And that was their fault. But for the most part, there's not a lot of San Diego Chargers Drew Brees in this, where the guy leaves your team and he goes somewhere else and he becomes a star. There's not a lot of that in the league. In fact, off the top of my head, the closest thing to it might be Ryan Tannehill, where he left Miami and the entire league thought he was a backup, and a year later he's quarterbacking in the AFC title game. That might be it. So then the question for the Titans becomes, do you view Tua, Lawrence, Dak, Jordan Love, do you view that as good enough? And I'm not sure I do. My premise would be, if Levis becomes that kind of quarterback, and I think TD's right. If he becomes that kind of quarterback, I think they are going to give him a contract. But if he becomes that kind of quarterback where we're really not sure, write it out. That's the whole purpose of the franchise tag. The whole point of the franchise tag, in my opinion, is to allow teams to keep superstars so it doesn't become the NBA. By the way, somebody texts in, and they are totally right. Lamar won the MVP last year, not Mahomes. I don't know why I thought Mahomes won the MVP. Dak was second last year, but Lamar was a runaway MVP. I don't know how I messed that up. But
I
again,
didn't pick up on it either. So
yeah, what's the matter with us today? But I will say this again: the force multiplier, like that guy has to win you games. Not we're giving him the contract because we're afraid of what happens if we don't. Then you're the Dolphins. I don't want to be the Dolphins. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Ian, did you see the Malik Willis hype after the practice on Saturday at Nissan Stadium?
I did hear a little bit about this. Yeah.
So there is some Malik Willis hype once again. We'll get to it next here on Stillman and Company. Is it something that we should be thinking about? We'll get to that next here on Stillman and Company on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. And let me tell all the fine folks out there, Nashville's best deal of the week is admission to the Frist. I should know that. That's where my bar mitzvah party was held at. The Frist Art Museum. Enjoy ever-changing exhibits from around the world, exhibitions from around the world, from world-renowned collections. Get creative and Martin Art Quest, the Frist hands-on art-making space, and find unique handcrafted items in their gift shop. Current exhibitions include fashion, photography, graphic art, ceramics, VR, and more. Head to GameNashville.com/deals now to get 2 tickets to the Frist Art Museum for the price of one while supplies last. That's a $15 savings.
Really pleased with Malik. I think both those quarterbacks have really done a nice job, and Malik came out and had a nice day with some aggressive throws. He's really done a nice job knowing what to do, where to go with the football, and really pleased with how he played today. It was a good day for Malik.
There you go. That was Brian Callahan at practice. Apparently on Saturday, Malik Willis lit it up, and the Malik Willis hype train is back. And I did see some of the videos on Twitter. The
All
throws,
aboard, all aboard.
They were not bad throws. All aboard the Malik Willis hype train. Let me say this. Whatever. I feel bad for Malik Willis. I really do. Because Malik does have some talent. Now, he doesn't have a lot of it, but he does have some of it. But he's short. He's not on time. And quite frankly, Malik was put in an untenable situation by the organization that to this day, I don't know what they were thinking. I mean, Malik was put in a position by the people making decisions in this organization that quite frankly, they should have known better. I mean, I knew better. I was begging, go get a real backup quarterback. Oh, no, Mike Vrabel said. Oh, no, John Robinson said. I'm like, he's not ready. Willis should have never sniffed the field in 2020. Instead, he starts a Sunday night football game against the Chiefs, and then he gets benched on Thursday night football against the Dallas Cowboys because Malik loses to a JV Texan team at the end of the year. Malik should have never been the backup in 2023. Again, what was Vrabel thinking? And I understand Will Levis had the injury, not a ton of reps, but it took one game for Levis to prove that he was head and shoulders better than Willis. It absolutely made no sense to me. And I just don't know if those are failures that Malik can come back from. You see, with developing quarterbacks, the way they're brought along, it's everything. And Malik was a project from the very beginning. And the Titans should have treated it as such. But instead, they used a third-round pick, and you don't want to use a third-round pick and then tell the owner that, yeah, this guy's probably 2 years away from maybe being able to compete. And so let's try. You don't want to do that, so you push him out there before he's supposed to, and that's how you ruin a quarterback. If Tom Brady had gone out his rookie year when he was a third-string quarterback and had been asked to beat Brett Favre on Sunday Night Football, which is essentially what the Titans did to Malik Willis, hey, go out there against Kansas City and beat Mahomes, I think there's a chance that would have damaged him beyond repair. In fact, the Patriot coaching staff said to themselves in training camp in 2001, they thought Tom Brady had outplayed Drew Bledsoe, but Drew Bledsoe was their $100 million quarterback, so they went with Bledsoe. Did Willis against third stringers on Saturday look significantly better than Will Levis? Did he show you anything that Will Levis hasn't shown you that he can already do in a game as a rookie? Willis is a third-year quarterback, and he's still a third-string quarterback. That means to me, his potential is that he can be a backup. Not is a backup, but can be a backup. But him mopping up on third stringers, which are probably a bunch of guys that'll be bagging groceries in 5 weeks anyways, that's not something that makes me sit there and say, what if Malik is the guy? And then there's this whole quarterback competition thing that Brian Callahan introduced at OTAs that kind of made everybody sit back and say, wait a minute, hold on, a quarterback controversy between Mason Rudolph and Malik Willis? If there is an actual quarterback controversy for the backup spot, a competition, I should say, not controversy. If there is an actual competition for the third string quarterback position, I mean, I'll be really disappointed. I mean, I was really disappointed when they signed Mason Rudolph because I don't think Mason Rudolph's very good. But if, let's just say that there is a competition, and I read Kaharski's article in which he says so far at practice, nothing they've done would indicate that there is a competition for the number 2 job. But if that is the case, and Malik Willis ends up playing meaningful snaps for this team this year, the way he played meaningful snaps last year, the way he played meaningful snaps the year before that, then I'm going to be just as mad at this administration as I am at the last administration for when they put Malik in the game. One practice does not erase what we've seen with our eyes, which is that Malik Willis isn't very good. And last year, Malik made the inexcusable decision against the Ravens when they were down by 2 scores in the fourth quarter, driving deep in Ravens territory. And instead of going out of bounds, he literally turned his body and jumped back inbounds so the clock would run. I've never looked at a quarterback and said, have you ever played Madden football before? Like, do you understand how the clock works? So I know. Malik had a good practice, and everybody will probably get excited, and they'll think that, he's the third stringer. They shouldn't cut him because they're already paying him, and there probably aren't other guys out there that are significantly better than him to be the third quarterback. But also the idea that Malik could somehow be a reclamation project and become something at quarterback, that's just not going to happen. Now, the one thing we do have to give him credit for is that Malik has taken the punches. A lot like Dylan Radins. Radins got knocked down early, got back up, got knocked down again. Now he's being told he has to play guard, but he's probably the best right tackle on the team. And Radins will get back up. Same with Malik. And I do give credit there. But I'm not interested in Malik playing quarterback for this team in games that matter. I actually think, because I really don't like Rudolph, I actually wonder if something were to happen to Levis, seriously, knock on wood, I do wonder if they should give Tannehill a call. Because Tannehill made it clear that he'd be interested in playing this year if the situation is right, which I interpret as Levis or Tannehill would be willing to play if he can start or make money, one or the other. And since you're not going to pay him any money, it would have to be the actual starting for whatever that means. 615-737-1025 is our phone number if you want to weigh in. Coming up next, did anybody see? Remember last Monday, they came back off vacation and Arden Key was on Instagram going off on Paul Kaharski. And yeah, Jeffrey Simmons had already complained about the local media, and then you got Arden Key. Well, Arden Key addressed it with Paul Kaharski. And I was stunned by what I heard and what I've come to expect to hear from the Titans and how different it was. We'll get to that next. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106 for the game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. The Titans, as Ian said, having their first padded practice tomorrow. Very exciting. We shall see if that will be what cures the offensive line. I doubt it, but hey, who knows? But did anybody see the video on Saturday after practice was over? Not of what happened at practice, but of Arden Key talking to Paul Kaharski. It kind of, Ian, did you see the video or just hear the audio from the video?
I didn't actually watch the entire video. I saw the tweet that he put out there and the still shot of Key before he spoke, but I didn't actually play the video.
Okay. So it kind of looked like a hostage video, but at the same time, it was Arden Key staring right into Paul's phone. And again, let's go back to, where this all started, which was about 2 weeks ago on Instagram. Arden Key put out there that nobody on the Titans listens to Paul or cares about Paul or something. And we know that all came after Paul Kaharski went on that giant rant about how you're not as big of a Titans fan as you think you are if you're rooting for the Ravens to have success with Derrick Henry, which Paul is right about. But that's what got Arden Key all mad. And so he put out there on social media, nobody listens to Paul, nobody cares about Paul, whatever it was. And Arden Key addressed it with Paul on Saturday. Here's what he said.
Hey, me and Paul had a conversation. We talked, we hashed everything out. He made a tweet, and he did it from his understanding. I took it a different way, and he explained himself on what he meant on the Twitter thing he said about Derrick. That's what my message came from what he said about Derrick. He explained himself. I explained myself. We talked like men, looked each other in the eye, and we made up.
Anybody got a problem with that? I don't. So Arden Key looked right into the camera, and he said he misunderstood Paul, and that after talking to Paul, they hashed it out, and it's all good. Maybe Arden Key still hates Paul. I have no idea. But from that, it didn't sound like it. Maybe Arden Key's just trying to move on. So he said what he needed to say to let it go. Or maybe Arden really didn't understand Paul. And when they hashed it out, said, oh, okay, now I understand what you're saying. Yeah, screw the Ravens. I'm on your side, Paul. Whatever. It's over. And Arden Key looks like a grown-up for how he handled the situation. He lashed out. Paul went and basically confronted him about it, I would assume. And Arden, after they hashed it out, decided to let bygones be bygones. Again, maybe they did come to a mutual understanding. I mean, I think Paul is in the right on this. Maybe they did come to a mutual understanding. Maybe they didn't. I don't know. But regardless, what Arden Key said was enough for me to say, okay, that's how a professional handles their business. That's how you end something that you probably shouldn't have started to begin with. Now, let's compare that with Jeffrey Simmons, who after the Titans signed Jamal Adams, went to Twitter to lash out at the local media and the fact that they rip on the Titans and decisions they make, and they try to be our friends. And when I asked Jeffrey Simmons about that last week. Speaking of Twitter, you a couple weeks ago had some criticism for us.
I'm not speaking on that. I'm moving on.
I'm not speaking on that. I'm moving on. So again, on one hand, we have Arden Key looking right in there saying, hey, Paul and I talked it out. I originally didn't like the tweet that he had about Derrick Henry, but after he explained it and he and I talked it out, totally understand where he's coming from. It's water under the bridge, the end. And the other guy says, I'm not talking about it. Folds his arm, turns around. I'm not talking about it. Let me ask you this. Which one of those two is supposed to be the leader of the team? It's not Arden Key. Which one bragged last week in the same interview about how good of a leader he is? I'm the one who breaks us down in the huddle before the games. Again, it wasn't Arden Key. Jeffrey Simmons is supposed to be the leader of the team. And he can't be accountable for what he said on Twitter. Arden Key is not a leader of the team. Arden Key's job is to sack the quarterback. I think there's one person that I know of in the history of the world that has an Arden Key jersey. There's Simmons jerseys everywhere. The Titans promote Simmons. But all he can say is, I'm not talking about it. And Arden Key can address it. See, leadership isn't just about being a good player. Leadership is about accountability. It's easier when you're a good player to get everybody to listen to you because you carry the stick of being such a good player. But the idea of everyone being Steve McNair, a great player that can play through any injury, that rallies an entire city around him, that's not as simple as it seems. Tom Brady is more of the exception than he is the rule. And if you even go back to those Patriot teams when they started that dynasty, the leaders were McGinnis, Bruschi, Vrabel. They weren't necessarily Tom Brady off the jump. So in one instance, we have Arden Key, a role player, technically a starter, but if the Titans were a good team, he probably wouldn't be starting, putting his hand in the air and saying, my bad, it's all good. On the other hand, we have Simmons, who will not address the controversy that he started. Remember when Mike Vrabel used to talk all the time about how we don't have any front runners? Do you know what he meant by that? One thing he said early in his tenure that really stuck out to me, there are two things Vrabel said very early in his tenure as a Titans coach that really stood out to me that I still remember to this day. The first has nothing to do with this, but it is, if you worry about the job that you don't have, you won't do the job that you do have. And I think that's a very, very insightful line. The other was, culture's not about when you win. Culture is about when you lose. Anybody can have a good culture when you win. Have you ever seen the Wall Street hedge funds when they're making money? Everybody's happy. Go into those offices in 2008 after Bear Stevens had to default. See what happens. Culture is about when things are bad. Culture is not about when things are good. So Vrabel's whole point about we don't have any front runners is we don't have people on this team that only show up and only do the right thing when things are going well for them. We've got guys that show up and do the right thing all the time, no matter what. Simmons seems to me to be a front runner. And quite frankly, I'm sick of it. Simmons loves to talk when things are going well. Simmons loves to talk when he's playing well. He loves to talk when he gets his contract. But where is Simmons when things aren't going well? Because again, that's what leadership is. Where is he when he's the center of negative attention? Remember the Marshall Yanda rumors? Marshall Yanda, the all-pro guard for the Ravens, came out and said, that's the dirtiest player in the NFL. He spit in my mouth during the games. Simmons doesn't want to talk about it. Won't talk about it. Again, is that leadership? When it comes to being a leader, there's a story Tom Brady told that I, again, like the Vrabel quotes, think is pretty insightful. Matt Castle tells it, that one day in practice, they ran a play and Matt Castle forgot the backside of the motion on the other side of the formation. And they ran the play and completed the pass anyways. And Brady lit him up for forgetting about the motion on the backside of the formation. And when Matt Castle looked at Brady and said, who cares, Tom? We completed the pass. Brady said, you're the quarterback. If you can't be accountable for running the play right, you can't hold anybody else accountable. That's leadership. So Jeffrey Simmons should be embarrassed when he looks at another guy who did the exact same thing he did. A guy who's a fringe starter, who's an average player in the NFL, who literally in the back corner of the stadium in the bowels had a hash it out with Paul and took that hostage video and said right there, we're all good. We hashed it out. I understand where he's coming from. It's over. Simmons should be embarrassed. And I can promise you he's not. I can promise you this is going to be, if it gets back to him, and I'm sure it probably will, it's going to be, oh, that Jared Stillman, that mean old Jared Stillman. Not, you could have said, If you had a problem with the media, you could have said what your problem was. If you wanted to end it the way Arden Key ended it, you could have ended it by saying right then and there, yeah, I just got emotional because I was so excited about the Jamal Adams signing because I think Jamal Adams is such a good player, and I saw you guys being down about it, and I understand you got to do your jobs, but I just disagree about it, and so for me, I shouldn't have sent that, and I apologize to you guys, and I understand you guys have jobs to do, and I appreciate all of you. That's all he's got to say. Instead, it's, I'm not talking about that. Yeah, that's great leadership, buddy. That's the guy I want breaking the team down. Yeah, you're the leader when you play well. When not, you cry in the corner like a crybaby. Yeah, got it. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Let's get to your phones if you want to weigh in on this. Plus, there's another thing about Jeffrey Simmons that honestly bothers me more than this, and it really doesn't have anything to do with the media, but it does bother me about Simmons. And also, we'll touch on that and get to your phones, and we'll do it next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
How big is this season for Jeffrey Simmons in your mind? And where is he as a player in this league?
He's not where he thinks he is as a player in this league. And he's not where I don't know where Callahan and Ben Bloom think he is. I know what they think he can be. I know what the previous staff thought. And look, he's not lived up to expectations the last 2 years. He's had his moments. The injuries have slowed him down and hurt him. But when Danico Autry was not beside him, when Danico Autry was hurt, he was not the player that he's fessed up to be. And there are a lot of interior defensive linemen who rate ahead of him at this stage. Can be a dominant player.
A lot. What's a lot?
10, 12.
10 or 12, said PK, in regards to Simmons. I don't know if I would say 10 or 12. I will say this. I'd rather have Chris Jones. I'd rather have Quinnen Williams. I'd rather have Justin Madubuike. And the reason why I'd rather have those guys is because they get to the quarterback. Jeffrey Simmons' career high in sacks is 8.5. He averages about 7 sacks a season, and that's forgetting about 2019 and 2020. 8.5 in 21, 7.5 in 22, 5.5 last year. That's not good enough. So while I'm criticizing Jeffrey Simmons for the fact that he wants to be a leader of the team, but he won't address the controversy that he starts, whereas Arden Key can, my other issue is he needs better stats. He needs to start playing better. In my opinion, Jeffrey Simmons is a good player. Now, I think he's kind of a secret whiner, always complains about other players and other teams, always thinks that he's not getting enough respect, his teammates aren't getting enough respect, that kind of stuff. But he needs to be the difference maker that at times. He played a Sunday night football game in 2021 against the Rams, and he was the best player on the field. And that Rams team won the Super Bowl. So he's got the juice in him. He just doesn't do it enough. And as the GM used to say, there's only one way a defensive lineman gets noticed and a defensive lineman gets paid. Sacking the quarterback. You can be a great run-stuffing defensive tackle, like Ted Washington. But there's a cap for how much people spend on that. For instance, DJ Reader of the Lions. Big old fat run-stuffing DT, and he's great at it. He's making $10 million this year, and he's going to make $11 million next year. That's the cap. Simmons is in the 20s, not the 10s. So when it comes to getting after the quarterback, that's another thing Jeffrey Simmons is going to need to do. Because everybody around here talks about him like he's great. He's good. He needs to get to 10 sacks. Until then, he's a good player that has potential to be a better player than he is, but he hasn't realized it yet. 10 sacks, that's what the good guys get to. And if Simmons wants to be one of those guys, he needs to get those sacks. Until then, to me, he's just like every other DT in the league. Every other solid defensive tackle in the NFL, like Daron Payne in Washington. That's what he is. Go sack the quarterback. Now you're in the Chris Jones, Quinnen Williams discussion. Chris Jones, and I know Mahomes gets all the hype, Chris Jones is an incredible player in those big games for Kansas City. I don't think they can do this without Chris Jones. I think they can do it without Kelsey. I don't think they can do it without Jones. They're going to try to do it without Snead. I don't think they can do it without Jones. Simmons is a good player. So when the team's great, he's good. When the team's bad, he's good. But he's never really elite. And everybody around here wants to talk about him like he's elite, and he's not there yet. He needs 10 sacks. And so, I agree with Paul on that front, too, that, hey, he's probably not where he thinks he is and where the Titans talk about him like he is. He's probably not that kind of player yet. And somebody texted into the text line and says, there goes your access to Simmons. And I'm like, first of all, I don't have any access to Simmons anyways. Also, I don't care about that. Here's the truth. You can either get all the access and not tell people the truth, or you can tell people the truth and know it's going to piss them off, and thus you're probably not going to have that quote-unquote inside access that somebody else has. I heard Diana Rossini today. I could not believe she was bragging about this. I mean, this is embarrassing. Like, I heard this, like, Joe Rexrode, I want you to hear this, because this is your colleague we're talking about, who, no matter how much she gets lied to and reports it, you will not ever admit that she was lied to. But Diana Russini told a story today that she got Saquon Barkley on her podcast. You know, she got a new podcast that's out. Ryan Tannehill was on it last week. She got Saquon Barkley on her podcast. And she admitted and talked about this like it was a good thing, that the reason that Saquon Barkley did her podcast was because at one point in time, she had a negative story about Saquon Barkley and did not run it. I'm like, my God. Like, just tell everybody, hey, I'm a phony. Like, if you want me to kill a story, I'm not a real journalist, like an investigative reporter. I don't. Could you imagine if Woodward and Bernstein were like, oh, yeah, all right, give us something better and we won't report Watergate. Come on. Oh, my God, it's embarrassing. So the idea of having access to the players, I don't care about that because it doesn't make for a good show anyways. I mean, look, every now and then there's a player who's important enough to sit down and ask serious questions on the record, and there are moments for that. But if you have to only ask nice things in order to get somebody to be on your show, no one's going to want to listen to that. So at the Super Bowl, we sat down with Will Levis, we asked real questions. And if Will got mad about it, like, he might not come back on the show, but it doesn't bother me. Because players don't say much anyways. It's like Simmons. I'm not talking about that. Okay. But yeah, no, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that the Titans are good if I don't think they're good, just so that I can get people to come on the show, because I don't think that helps. And not only that, I mean, look, I tell all the coaches when they get hired, like, hey, man, like, I'm going to say what I think, and you might not like it. And if you don't like it, I understand. Like, but if I don't like it, then I'm just going to say it. And that's just how it's going to be. I cannot believe that Diana Russini admitted to killing a Saquon Barkley story in order to get a favor to have him go on her podcast. That is so shameful. Diana should be embarrassed. And I'm probably the only person that heard that and thought, oh my God. Like, just light your own credibility on fire. Oh my God. Kyle in Shelbyville said that apparently when she was on her interview, he said in the YouTube chat, ready, steady, Vrabel. Unbelievable. Texter into the text line says, I can't believe what I'm about to say, but I completely agree with you regarding Jeffrey Simmons. He needs to be better in all aspects. That comes from Casey in Gallatin. I have to be honest with you. When it comes to Simmons, and I'm getting mad about the accountability thing, a lot of people are going to interpret that as Jared's mad that he didn't answer his question. I don't care about that. I've said 1,000 times, I can't control what somebody says. You know, sometimes I will ask somebody, well, why didn't you ask Vrabel after the Jags game about his job status when Ian Rappaport's on TV talking about how there's a sentiment that he might not be back? How could you not get there and ask him that? Well, what's he going to say? I don't know. Ask him. So that's how I feel when it comes to asking questions. I have no idea. When Barry Trotz comes on the program, and again, going back to the Diana thing, I mean, I've made it abundantly clear to both the Predators and Barry that, like, I like Barry. I think he's doing a good job. But, like, if things start to go haywire, those Tuesday interviews, you know, those questions are going to be a little bit more contentious because things aren't going well. And I think they know that. I think they understand it. And I appreciate that from them. But again, like, I ask a question. I don't know what he's going to say. So when it comes to Simmons, like, his non-answer told me all I needed to know. And that was that he wasn't going to be accountable for what he tweeted. And that's fine. That's his business. But you can't be a leader and not be accountable. You can't hold everybody else accountable and not be accountable yourself. Adam in Portland says, at this point, Jeffrey Simmons has a chance to be Albert Haynesworth for the Titans or Albert Haynesworth in Washington. Not sure there will be an in-between. Either he will dominate or he will be a major disappointment. I'm going to tell you this about Simmons. I think the talent is there. Like, for him to be a 10-sack guy, for him to disrupt games, for him to win games for you, I think it exists. But I don't know, because everybody kisses his ass so much and everybody's so afraid of pissing him off. I don't know that he'll feel the need to do that, because everybody around him tells him he's great. And to that point, now he already got paid, so he doesn't have the same motivation Hainsworth had. But I also don't think that he's, as lazy as Hainsworth had the reputation of being. Now, I like Hainsworth, so I'm not going to call him lazy. But, Chris Mortensen, may he rest in peace. Chris Mortensen said on the draft broadcast the day that Hainsworth was drafted, was like, well, one of the knocks on him around my sources in the league is that he's lazy. They're like, he could be Reggie White, but he's lazy. 615-737-1025. That is our phone number again. That's 615-737-1025. There is a news item out there that might affect probably not millions of you, but hundreds of thousands of you. And Ian, it might be good for you, but in the long run, I think it's bad for all of us. We'll get to that. 615-737-1025. And we'll mix in some, people want to get in phones on this, so we'll do phones next. 615-737-1025. Stillman and Company, 1025, 106 through the game.
defensive line, aside from Jeff, even in years past, it's always been a group that's been deep and a group that's had a lot of, guys who have experience like Danico. You don't have as much of that this year. What's your evaluation of some of these up and coming guys like McClendon and Bohanna that maybe getting more of a shot this year?
Yeah, I mean, they get their opportunity. It's just like everything else. Like you said in the past, you've had a bunch of great D linemen, but even those guys at some point were young and had to prove themselves and earn a spot. And it's just the way the league rolls. It's I don't want to say this sounds bad, but like kind of out with the old in with the new. These guys get their opportunity, and I know TK's up for the challenge. I know Big Q and Coburn, like all those guys, and Marlon Davison. These guys want opportunities, and they're going to have the opportunity to do so. I think all these guys grew this offseason. It's been good to see them run, going out there a little bit ago and seeing these guys move around, and you can tell it's a different group. I think even Jeff, like, it doesn't get talked about as much, but like Jeff's leadership, and the way he's like really, it was always like Jeff was the leader of the D-line group. And then now you feel Jeff is not only the leader of the D-line group and the defense, but the whole team, and you feel it and you see it. And, the way he goes is the way the group goes, just not in terms of on the field, but off the field as well, and how he handles his business. And so he set a great example for those guys, so they have something to follow.
Jeff's the leader of the team, Rand Carthon says, on the field, off the field, the way he handles his business, then he won't be accountable. Arden Key will be. Not a great look. I promised phones, so we'll do those. 615-737-1025. Our phone line is driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com. Dre has been waiting patiently and is up next on Jeffrey Simmons. Dre, go ahead.
Man, I have a question for you, Jared. Where are you from?
Here.
Nashville.
Correct.
Okay. Man, you need to stop and drop these little hick storylines, man. Now you attacking Jeffrey Simmons. Dude, come on. Think about it from this standpoint here, Jared. I'm getting tired of this trolling because it's just so small townish. Listen here, my man. What about the offense couldn't sustain a drive, running those boys in the ground?
I'm not allowed to talk about that.
No, Jeffrey, no. Jeffrey Simmons was injured the year before last and last year. Man, you can't run those boys. Man, they play nonstop because we couldn't sustain a drive. We couldn't get a first down. Man, come on, man.
So you want me to make excuses for him?
I'm not making excuses, man.
Sounds like an excuse.
The league told you how good Jeffrey Simmons is. The
By
league
how?
told you. And
How?
now he's number 4, ranked out of defensive linemen. He's number 4. And you know he ought to be number 2. Let's keep it real.
Do I? Because who would you rather take, him or Chris Jones?
Chris Jones. He's
okay.
just as good as
Who would
Chris
you rather
Jones.
have, him or Justin Matabike?
Him.
Really?
Hands down. Yes.
Even though
hands
Justin
down.
Matabike got like 14 sacks last year?
Man, come on. Have you watched, dude, really?
Yes,
Have you watched
I watched
how many-
Justin
how many
Matabike
seconds-
almost kill Ryan Tannehill last year. I
Oh,
saw
my
that.
God. Wow. Come on, dude. Okay. So you don't have him. You got Jeffrey Simmons, top 5 defensive players, and this is all you got? Man, we just had an explosive, beautiful practice. Man, pull up some of that. That's a better storyline. You and all your hits on your station, dude. Come on, y'all.
What makes this a hit?
Now?
Dre, you asked where I was from.
Yes, you're old world Nashville hit. That's
See,
what you are.
I
You wanna
actually
attack
disagree.
Jeffrey Simmons?
And
Come on, dude,
here's
Jeffrey
what I
Simmons.
think, Dre, and I appreciate
Come
your call.
on.
Here's what I think is the small town radio, which we don't do here, and that's why 1025, the game has never been more successful than it is now. I don't think we've ever had a better lineup than we have now, and it's never been more successful. But here's why. Because the way things used to be was nobody wanted to rock the boat. Nobody wanted. Nobody wants to say, oh, they don't want the coach mad at them, and then the coach won't go on their show, and they don't want this one mad at them. They don't want that one mad at them. They don't want the go to New York. You ever listen to WFAN in New York? I have. They don't care. Go to Boston. See, I lived in Boston. I lived in New England for a year. That Felger and Maz program, we play their clips all the time. Guess what? They don't take it easy on those teams either. I remember in 2012, when I first started in New Hampshire, and the Patriots lost the AFC title game to the Ravens, and I was listening to the Felger and Maz program, and these people were calling in and just bitching about Tom Brady and Bill Belichick and how it was time to move on from Bill and it was time to move on from Tom and go to Ryan Mallett. And I sat there in my living room. The show was simulcast on TV on the same channel the Celtics games were on. And I was sitting there in my living room thinking, my team's quarterback is Jake Locker and their head coach is Mike Munchak. And I am listening to these people scream about Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. When I was in Louisville, there was a fork in the road moment for me. A player by the name of Akoy Agau transferred away from Louisville, and Rick Pitino threw him under the bus, and I was at that fork in the road, where on one hand, I could brush it off, shrug my shoulders, and say, oh, well, Akoy Agau, who cares? He didn't play that much anyways. Or I could call it for what it was. Another failed recruiting class from Pitino. Meanwhile, John Calipari at Kentucky had the number one team in the country, and they had Carl Towns and Trey Lyles and Anthony Davis and all these guys over a 4-year period that were all going on to be drafted number one in the NBA. And I'm like, which one am I going to pick? Knowing that if I had picked the route of telling it like it is, it would have pissed some people off. I found out a month ago that apparently after I did that, my co-host at the time got a call from the university in which they basically wanted me off the program. Because they're like, how dare he? So to me, that's big time radio, and small town radio is the coach is always right. That's small town radio. The Kentucky Wildcats, oh, we hired Mark Pope. We're so much better than that, too. Mark Pope is our guy. That's small town radio. Real town radio to me is keeping it real. That's the difference. Woo. One texter says, acting like you don't nitpick everything and barely give any type of praise is hilarious. I give praise all the time. What are we talking about? How much praise did I give the Titans when Ryan Tannehill in 2019 took over as quarterback and Derrick Henry started running all over the league? We talked about it every day. We've talked all the time about, are the Titans being disrespected? And when I thought they were, I said it. But when I think that Jeffrey Simmons has an opportunity to be accountable and instead won't, because he doesn't think he needs to, because they've got too many people that support the team like the last caller that only want to hear good things. And no, Jeff, you're good no matter what. Jeff, don't worry about the fact that you had 5.5 sacks last year. I think you're better than Justin Madubuike, who had 13 sacks. Jeff can't even sniff a jock of 13 sacks. What are we talking about? No, he's better than that. Oh, my God. Woo. Oh, my God. It's like, what are we talking about here, people? Come on now. I mean, come on. One texter said, preach it. Entitled whiners. I got to tell you, I talked about toxic positivity during the offseason when everything was good and everybody was doing great and and people got mad at me then. And remember Nicholas Petit-Frere, a.k.a.
PT.
He was doing great. Remember, that's what Brian Callahan told us that. He hadn't practiced once, but other than that, he's doing great. And now it's like, okay, Bill Callahan's out there saying we thought we were going to get him back earlier, but I guess we'll get him back Friday, and this we'll see. I mean, I don't know. It's like, oh, good. Another year where we have to make excuses at right tackle, and we'll see how that goes. And then I say that, and people get mad. But I just have a hard time with, like, everybody's telling you they think this team stinks. Everybody's telling you that, right? The over-unders, Vegas, and yet all you want to hear is the opposite. And if I think the opposite's true, I'll say it. But I am not going to sit there and just make up things to make you feel better about your team. You can listen to another channel if you want to do that. If you want to hear stuff that just makes you feel better, if you want affirmation, you can do that. If you want information, you can listen to this show. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025 here on our program. Mo says, Jared, thanks for keeping it real. These people are sensitive. I don't know about that. I just think some people want to hear good things and other people want to hear the truth. And on this show, we tell the truth. And when somebody's playing well, somebody's good, something's a good sign. I thought a great example of this was the day they signed Mason Rudolph and Calvin Ridley. And they signed them about 20 minutes apart. And when they signed Mason Rudolph, I went off because I thought that was the stupidest backup quarterback decision they could have made. 20 minutes later, they signed Calvin Ridley, and I said it was a good signing. Why? Because I think one was good and I think one was bad. If I was a homer, I would have said they were both good. If I was just looking to complain, I would have said they were both bad. But I didn't. Because, again, it's case by case here. 615-737-1025 is the phone number, 615-737-1025. I did tease this. And I said, there is something that probably affects hundreds of thousands of you, including you, Ian. This affects you.
Yes.
And it may be good in the short term for people like Ian, but I think it's bad in the long term for all of us. We'll hit it next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 for the game.
we never really intended for the signal to be pulled from Xfinity. We wanted to continue a negotiation. I've actually been in the business for 44 years. I started in the regional sports network business when it first started up in the early 80s. And I've seen impasses like this many, many times in my career. And very, very rarely is a signal pulled from a provider. Usually you see the dance of, well, we'll give you a 48-hour extension or a 5-day extension or an 8-day extension while we continue to talk. It's highly irregular for that to have not happened here. And we are ready to talk. We're ready to get back to the table. We want to provide this great content to sports fans throughout Tennessee.
That was Jeff Ginther, the senior vice president or whatever, the guy who runs Bally Sports South. Now, he doesn't run Bally's, but he runs Bally Sports South. There is some news on the Bally's front. We on this program have been actively rooting for Bally's to die, and Bally Sports has their bankruptcy hearing at the end of the month, which I believe is tomorrow. I mean, I guess it's 2 days from now, but I think the hearing is tomorrow. And they have a very sympathetic judge in Judge Christopher Lopez down in Texas who's overseeing the case. But their financials are so bad at Bally Sports that, they're so close to being just killed. And as a fan who has YouTube TV, I root for that. And for all fans, I root for that. Teams have already made backup plans. Alex Doherty reported in the Tennessean that the Predators had already had discussions. And again, this is his reporting. I have no idea if this is true or not, but that the Predators had talked to other channels about, hey, if Bally Sports dies, we're going to go on over-the-air TV for free so people can watch the games. And as a fan, I'm like, yes, yes, yes. And it looked like without Comcast, there was no way out for Bally Sports, even with a sympathetic judge. This in from Alden Gonzalez, who covers business for ESPN. Quote, Comcast and Diamond Sports Group, which is Bally Sports. Comcast and Bally Sports announced they've reached a new carrier deal today. Under the agreement, fans who subscribe to Xfinity's Ultimate TV package can watch MLB games again beginning on Thursday. That would also apply to the Grizzlies, the Predators, etc. They can also stream on the Bally Sports app using Xfinity credentials. This deal applies to Diamond's 15 regional sports networks, assuming they emerge from bankruptcy, and will apply to NBA and NHL RSNs too. This is indeed Comcast's higher, more expensive tier, which had been a sticking point in the negotiations. I'm told Xfinity customers who upgrade to Ultimate TV by August 30th will get it for free for 3 months, after which it's $20 more a month. Holy crap. You just go to the games. So essentially, if you sign up when it launches on Thursday, you can watch your baseball team for free through the end of the season. That's if you have Xfinity. Ian, you have Xfinity.
Yes.
Are you going to upgrade to Ultimate TV and pay $20 more a month?
I'm not sure. We might actually have the Ultimate TV package already. But
you guys must be billionaires.
But $20 extra a month just to watch the Preds does not sound enticing.
So when I hear this, all I can think of is no, 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 no. And here's why. Because this model for Bally Sports, for how they survive, doesn't exist. The reality is the RSNs for years made a fortune off of people who did not watch the games. I've told the story about my grandmother who lives in Florida. She lives outside of Palm Beach, and she gets the Marlins, the Panthers, and the Miami Heat. And over the last 30 years, I'm not sure she's watched one game. And she's paying like $11 a month or whatever in order to watch those teams, and she ain't watching. Like, my grandmother is not watching the Miami Heat. I'm sorry. Well, what's happened is a lot of people have gone away from traditional cable. I've gone away from traditional cable. A lot of people have gone away from traditional cable, and we don't want to pay for those channels. And a lot of people, once that they realized, hey, the truth is most people don't build their purchasing of cable TV around being able to watch regular season baseball games. Most people do not do that. So what happened was these skinnier bundles where they're charging less for cable, the YouTube TVs, the slings, those, they're like, we're not going to pay a fortune in order to run these games. And we don't think enough people care about it. And they would be right. You know, I could get on here and I could say that this is bad news for the Predators. The Predators will still get paid by Bally Sports. I could say this is bad news for the Predators because we've had this long enough to know that these streamers like me are not going to change their purchasing habits just because Bally Sports survives for another season until they go back into bankruptcy and they get killed. They're not going to change their habits because they haven't already changed them. And so I've been rooting for this godforsaken channel with this untenable business model to die and just go away and allow us to watch the games the way we've always watched the games, which is by taking a remote control, pointing at the TV, and clicking. That's what we want to do. And they can't do it. And so when the Comcast negotiations came up, all Comcast wanted was to move them to a higher package because they have a lot of customers like my grandmother who they're not going to upgrade their TV to watch these channels that they don't care about. Well, Bally knows they can't do that because when they go to that Ultimate TV channel, that not enough people are going to pay the $20 extra per month. Ian loves the Predators.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he loves them.
We do have the Ultimate TV package. We've been getting, as a RSN fee adjustment credit, $7.60.
Ah.
We've been getting like a little bit of a credit back for not having the RSN, but we're also getting a regional sports fee of $10.
So you're paying for regional sports, but you're not getting regional sports. So you're netting out at -3 on your regional sports.
Something like that.
Scale.
Yeah. Minus something like that. $5 plus $5.
I mean, this business model doesn't make any sense. It's time for Bally Sports to die. I want Bally Sports to die. Ian, do you want Bally Sports to die?
I mean, as long as everybody there that we like still gets a job. Sure.
So, i.e. that Willie and Chris don't lose their jobs.
Correct.
Well, I mean, somebody's going to have to call the games.
Right.
And it's probably going to be Willie and Chris,
Mhm.
even if it's not on Bally Sports.
And there's other people in the crew, but yes.
I mean, again, it's probably just going to be the same people that are working for Bally Sports or work for whatever.
Then
the
I'm
next
fine with that.
venture is. It's bad for sports fans. It's bad for sports fans. The business model doesn't make any sense. There's no way long-term for this to survive. And yet, I think by Bally capitulating to Xfinity, and there's just not going to be enough people. I mean, even if you like these teams, I don't know that you'd be willing to pay $20 extra per month. And I can't make the argument. I'm not going to make the argument because it's not true. I can't make the argument that, you know, if you love the Predators, you'll pay $20 extra per month. I'm not going to do that because I think you can love the Predators without having to pay $20 extra per month. And then not only that, there's, ESPN Plus, and there's TNT, and there's all these other games that are on all these other channels you got to pay for. Like, no. And so I knew that if they didn't get a deal done with Comcast, and I didn't know how they were going to get a deal done with Comcast when they weren't willing to go to the higher tier. And I knew they weren't going to be willing to go to the higher tier because they're not going to get enough people to sign up for it. They're not going to get their subscriber fees. They're going to lose a fortune. They're going to lose their ass in this. And so I knew there was no way they'd capitulate. But ultimately, I guess they realized that not being able to go up to the judge and saying, we do not have a deal with Comcast was not good enough. So they came up with a deal on Comcast terms that is not going to be able to keep them afloat. And it's just so they can survive for one extra year. Judge Lopez, kill him. Get rid of Bally Sports. Just end it, please, for all of us out there that want to watch the games at a fair price. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. I am going to make a deal with Titans fans. It's a choice you get to make. We'll do it next. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. So I am frustrated with Titans fans today, and I have a negotiation to make with those Titan fans. So I didn't go to the practice on Saturday at Nissan Stadium, but by all accounts, the offensive line, once again, sucks. In fact, here's what Brian Callahan said after that practice on Saturday.
I think we got to be better. We got to be firmer in protection. It's obviously hard without pads on. We're not really anchoring on guys. But I think we just got to execute better. I thought we missed a couple throws that we could have had. I know Will had a touchdown on a deep ball, and the ball slipped out of his hand, so that one wasn't any fun, but we had a shot. But yeah, it was good. We just a lot of things. We're 4 days in. We got plenty of stuff to work on, and, that's why we're practicing.
Okay. So he tried to sugarcoat a little bit, but again, he said, yeah, we got a lot to work on. And, we're not wearing the pads, so we're not anchoring in the pass sets. We're not. And it took me right back to last year after the third practice. When I walked out of St. Thomas Sports Park, got in the car, called my dad. This was my old car at the time. Got in the car, called my dad, and I said, this offensive line is terrible. They have not put the pads on yet. I know, but they are terrible. And then I started talking publicly about how bad the offensive line is. I know it's only 3 practices. I know they haven't put the pads on. And Vrabel and everybody else, oh, no, when they put the pads on, it'll be different. The same thing Brian Callahan just said. We'll put the pads on. It'll be different. Was it different? You watched all 17 games last year. And again, the conversation was, I hopped in the car. I told my dad, I know they haven't put the pads on. I know it's the 3rd day of practice. This offensive line sucks. Was it any different for 17 games? And you know the answer to that is no. Tomorrow, they put the pads on for the first time. I will be at practice tomorrow when they wear pads for the first time. Now, I'm going to call it like I see it. That's how I've always been. That's how it's always going to be. But I have sensed a level of frustration today when talking about the offensive line and my fear that the offensive line still sucks and the fear that I had specifically on the right side of the line, which the team almost completely ignored outside of $2.5 million for Sadiq Charles. The side of an entire offensive line that they just totally ignored this offseason. I told you in March I didn't like it. I told you in April I'd go tackle with my first 2 picks. I told you that I would have made a trade for Morgan Moses. I would have signed Jermaine Illuminor. I would have done something. I've told you the right tackle story a gazillion times. And today, when I started the show and I talked about how 3 practices in last year, I put my hands over my eyes and I said, oh my God, no. I got bombarded in the text line with people that are, we don't want to hear you complain about the offensive line anymore. We don't want to hear the right tackle story anymore. We don't want to hear about So here's the deal. It's you guys pick 615-737-1025. Here's the deal. I'm going to practice tomorrow. If the offensive line sucks, I'll mention it a little bit and then move on and talk about other things. But if the offensive line is bad this year, you're not allowed to complain about it. If it's still bad at right tackle, if it's still bad at right guard, if Skoronski, who was awful last year, if he's awful this year, week 6, don't come bitching to me. Because I've been about this offensive line since before Brian Callahan was hired as the coach. The day Brian Callahan got hired, I sat down with him and I told him the right tackle story. And you want to know what they didn't do this offseason? They didn't get a right tackle. And I understand. The last 2 years have been painful for all of us. They've been painful for me. I didn't think the offensive line could get worse than the 2022 Dennis Daly offensive line. And I'll be damned, because the Titans went out of there. They found a way. They hired the least qualified guy to be the offensive line coach. They went out and signed a bust who didn't have a heart to play left tackle. And they doubled the salary of a 270-pound center. So, I mean, they really screwed the pooch. But what's crazy is you guys want to hear about the team. You guys want to hear about what's going on in training camp. You guys want to hear about, okay, this is looking good. This is not, this is going to be a problem for them. This is going to be something they can excel at. This is going to be, you want to know if they're going to win games or not. I'm here to tell you right now, rule of thumb, if you can't block in the NFL, you ain't winning. I think we can all agree with that. Joe Burrow's Bengals, maybe a little different story there, but you don't have Joe Burrow. You don't have Jamar Chase. So, again, this is all I ask is if you do not want to hear about the right tackle, if you do not want to hear about right guard, if you do not want to hear about them getting beat in practice, if that's what's happening, and by all accounts, that is what happened on Saturday. If you don't want to hear about that, then don't come crying to me during the season. Because this is, Caroline called it, I want to say, April, May, and she said, this is what we call it'll be fine season. Where somebody, it'll be fine. So what if so-and-so has a lacerated forearm? He'll be ready for the season. It'll be fine. Remember, Nicholas Petit-Frere did not play last year. Gambling suspension, got in a couple of games, was terrible, got hurt because TJ Watt's too fast off the edge, basically ripped his shoulder out of his socket. And then he missed the offseason program because he had a knee injury. But again, everybody told him, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. Well, he still hasn't practiced yet. Are you sure it's still fine? Andre Dillard was getting whooped every day in practice last year. And Vrabel told us, it'll be fine, it'll be fine, it'll be fine. And now Mike Vrabel doesn't have a real job. But do you want to hear it'll be fine? Because, again, the reason that I'm scared to death when I hear people are going to these going to these practices out there at Nissan Stadium, and for the third year in a row, they're watching the offensive line get whooped. The reason that I'm scared to death of it is because we know what happens if the line cannot block this year. If the line cannot block this year, then Will Levis will get hurt. As PK said, after Ryan Tannehill got hurt in London, he said, I was standing in the locker room and I saw Tannehill on crutches, and I knew that with this offensive line, it was inevitable that was going to happen. They got the quarterback hurt 3 times last year. The line before that got the quarterback hurt twice. Tannehill got hurt both times. Last year, Tannehill got hurt once, Levis got hurt twice. So we love the football season. We care about the Titans. We want the Titans to be good. I love the Titans. I mean, I've told the Titans, look, guys, I'm going to rip your ass, but I do love this team. And I want this team to win more than you know. But what I'm not going to do is I just can't sugarcoat it. And so when I'm thinking about last year and about the fact that Vrabel and everybody else said after 3, they haven't put the pads on. It's not fair. Andre Dillard, he'll show you. And I hear the same things now on Twitter about, can we wait till they put the pads on before we get upset about that? We did that last year. We played it your way last year, where I watched Andre Dillard suck, and I'm like, this guy sucks. But I didn't bang on it every day. I didn't bang on Aaron Brewer every day. I knew it wasn't going to work, but I didn't bang on it every day. I didn't tell the right tackle story every day. And then by about week 4, everybody knew. Well, if the Cleveland game happens again, and you're one of these people that, I only want to hear about the good things, then don't come crying to me. You cannot have it both ways. And I will say this. If this offensive line, if it is Latham as a rookie, Skoronski at left guard, Cushenberry at center, I don't even know who's the leader in the clubhouse is at right guard. I guess it's Sadiq Charles. Sadiq Charles at right guard, and by all accounts, his Washington tenure was awful. And Nicholas Petit-Frere, a.k.a.
PT.
PT is an RT, and this is a serviceable offensive line, then you bet your panties that I will be on this show praising Bill Callahan and Brian Callahan. Because the talent they have on this group, it ain't good enough. The center is good enough. The left tackle, he's a rookie. It'll take some time. I have some hope. But the rest of it ain't good enough. But I'm willing to tell you where my position is today, where my position has been all off season. I heard Brian Callahan go on with Caroline, Willie, and D. Mace at the Combine and say on the midday show that, Petit Frere and Jalen Duncan, they did some good things. I'm like, oh, no. And I still feel that way today. And I don't care who's coaching them. I told you guys this when everyone kept telling me, Bill Callahan, he'll fix it. Maybe he will. But I'm not convinced that he's Jesus Christ yet, that he can turn water to wine. I'm not convinced of that. And this offensive line, it's sewage. So if he does, then I'll be the first to say, hey, they got it right. They got it right hiring Brian Callahan, and they got it right hiring Bill Callahan. But what I'm not going to do is not pretend like this isn't a big problem they have right now. But I'm willing to make a deal. If an overwhelming majority of you say, Jared, we do not want to hear about the offensive line during training camp, then I will only just tell you what happened and leave it at that and move on. But if they stink every day, I will tell you guys, you're not allowed to complain about it. I am. Ian is, but you're not. Because a lot of people only want to hear good things in July. Every single one of these training camps. Oh, he's looking good. He's playing great. He's this. He's that. I saw it last year, and I watched it metastasize into that horrendous offensive line, and I'm not doing it again. I'm not backing down on it if it doesn't get better. Unless you all want me to, and then I don't want to hear from you during the season. 615-737-1025. So now we will get to all of your phones and your thoughts on this. We'll do that next as I have opened it to you guys here on the program. 615-737-1025. The one thing that I do not complain about that I do absolutely love is Window Nation. That's right. I trust Window Nation so much. Trevor texted me. He was like, hey, I'm replacing some windows. Who are the window? I'm like, Window Nation. Here's their number. Give them a call. They'll take great care of you. And I would only do that with Trevor if I truly trusted him. And I do. And with the heat starting to ramp up a little bit, inefficient windows will mean high utility bills all year long. And Window Nation is going to lower those bills for you by selling some of the most energy efficient windows you can buy. They were recently ranked highest on Forbes' list of best window installation companies. Right now, for every 2 windows you'll buy, you'll get 2 windows free. Plus, 0 down and no interest or payments for 2 years. Again, for every 2 windows you'll buy, you'll get 2 windows free. 0 down, no interest or payments for 2 years. Schedule an in-home estimate right now with the company I trust. That's Window Nation, 866-90Nation, or visit windownation.com. That's 866-90Nation, windownation.com.
Yeah, I was hoping he would be back. I think we're going to push his rehab back a little bit to Friday. Hopefully we can get him back and then accelerate from there. Back in Cleveland, I had a number of tackles that, started the year on PUP. So it's that situation where it's a fine line. He's getting all the classroom walkthrough type work, but he needs to get on the field and practice, which he'll get to. I'm not concerned about that. More importantly, it's getting him back into a groove where he can communicate and get into his pass sets and get that timing down.
Would you consider him at the head of the line at right tackle?
I don't know. In all honesty, fairness to everybody, I've reserved all my comments on the evaluation process until we've seen him in pads, seen him, obviously in a preseason game, and interact with them on the bench and see them make adjustments and see how they handle, the pressure of game day.
That was Bill Callahan today talking to the media about Nicholas Tietfrere, a.k.a.
PT.
And
Big Coach.
Talking about, hey, is he going to go to I don't know. He's doing the classroom work, but he needs to get on the field. It reminds me so much last year of Mike Vrabel and every excuse he made for Andre Dillard. And quite frankly, those kind of decisions got him fired. All right, I promised your phones because, again, I said, look, I won't complain about tomorrow. They're putting the pads on. I'm going to practice. If it's bad, I'm going to tell you. But I'm not, if you guys don't want to hear about the offensive line anymore, I won't talk about it, but then don't come complaining to me during the season. It reminds me of one of the practices last year where the offensive line was just getting porked by the defense. And I asked Arden Key, had he, ever dominated a defensive line like that before in practice? And Arden Key looked at me and was like, I thought it was pretty even both ways. I was like, oh my God. When you've got the biggest trash talker on the team sitting there saying, oh, no, everybody played well, that's when he's trying not to hurt anybody's feelings. And I'm like, oh God, if Arden Key is giving you grace, what does that mean? Phone line shared by WilsonCountyHunter.com. Mutt is in Bowling Green and is going to kick us off on this. Thank you for calling. Thank you for waiting. Mutt, go ahead.
Man, I was just calling in, let you know that I tune in daily for the hard truth. I mean, I want to know the Titans' flaws. I hate the right tackle situation. You're part of the reasons why I fell in love with Joel Alt. But anyways, man, I love that Ian's getting better at his AKA Qs and and man, I'm right behind you. You just keep putting it out there. I don't know who's crying about it, but I'm right here listening.
Thank you, Mutt. I appreciate that. See, here's the thing too. This is like every coach. I think the reason why I did this, I told Ian this during the break. This was not our original 5 o'clock topic. What happened was in the 2 o'clock hour, I started talking about the offensive line, and the text line became a crybaby fest about, we don't want to hear about offensive line anymore. And so I was like, all right, do you guys really want to be? And I think I was speaking to a smaller part of the audience here. I think most people, and I think our ratings reflect this, I think most people want to hear the truth. And that's why this show is popular. And I think sometimes, I think there are some people that hate the truth and that it kills them, but they have to listen. And so they hate me and they hate the show and they go to work every day and talk about how much they hate me and hate the show, but they have to listen because they know it's the truth. Truth hurts. But that's why I said it. I think our audience is a smart audience, but I think there are some people in there that are like, oh gosh, I don't want to, and look, I'm scared to death about the line stinking too. I'm sick of it. I want a good line. That's why I spent all free agency sitting there begging them to sign Jermaine Illuminor. Well, he's not that good. He's better than John Ojukwu. That's all I need. One texter says, as much as I am tired of hearing you talk about the right tackle, it's unfortunately the biggest talking point, and even more than Will Levis, because the offensive line will affect how he plays and stays healthy. There was also another text in here that was the offensive line is the only way that we're going to know if Levis can be the guy or not, because if they kill Levis, then he's absolutely not going to be the guy. And if Levis gets hurt 3 weeks into the year, how are we going to know? And it reminds me of something Corey Curtis said, which I don't think is necessarily true, but I understand the logic, which is he came on the show and he said he thinks there's more pressure on Bill Callahan than there is on Brian Callahan or Will Levis, because Brian and Will cannot do their jobs if Bill doesn't get the line to do his job. And I do think there's something to that. Like, I really do. Dre says, good or bad, I want to hear the truth. And I want to complain about it when we suck because it's the only way of venting. And at the very least, management and coaching and staff can hear our complaining, and hopefully one day they can actually do something about it instead of just blowing us off and telling us it will be all right, because I don't know how much more I can take of it. Amen, Dre. That is amen. Amen. I am tired of the line stinking. I am tired of complaining about it. And let me say this. People ask me about my job. I've been offered to go to bigger markets and probably make more money. And that's not to say that, like, if New York called, I wouldn't go. I think I probably would. Because in New York, you know, the 4 commissioners of the sports listen to your show. So that's a pretty big stick. But one of the favorite parts that I have about my job is that I remember when I was a sophomore in high school, the Titans started off 0-2. This was Vince Young's rookie year. They lost at home to the Jets. They lost at home to the Chargers. And I remember walking out of the stadium just complaining to my dad about, you know, this guy stunk and the tackling was terrible and the coaching was awful and this was bad. And yet, as much as it hurt me to watch the Titans stink, I didn't have any recourse. There was nothing I could do about it. There was nothing I could, you know, it's just me complaining to my dad. Well, now with this job, what I know is if I don't like something, I told Brian Callahan this the day that he got, or the day after he got hired. Like, if I don't like something, you're going to hear about it. And like for you guys, like, this is a popular show. People listen to this show. So when you call this show and you vent your complaints, they hear it. And that's probably the favorite part that I have, is that if I really feel strongly about something, the teams in this town, they hear it. So they may not do it. They may not do anything about it, but you at least know where I stand on it. And I'm with Dre when Dre sitting there saying, like, hey, you know, I want to talk about it because if this is bad again, this is the only way we can complain about it. Josh says, I don't get it, Jared. I thought people wanted to hear what's going on in training camp, good or bad. Don't you want to know what's up? Josh says he appreciates me. Thank you. Larry says, it's your opinion, not necessarily the truth. I think my opinion last year about Andre Dillard and Aaron Brewer was the truth. And people tried to gaslight us for 8 weeks of the season about Aaron Brewer. That guy sucked.
Good PFF grade.
Sucked. Joel says, you can continue to talk about it in camp, but to pass final judgment on the Titans offensive line for the season can only really happen once the regular season starts. The starting right tackle may not even be practicing or playing on the team right now. And somebody else texted and said, Trevor said that he doesn't even think that the offensive line is going to be, the right tackle is on this team. That's a bad thing.
He was praising OJ, John, however you say his last name, Ojukwu. Would you feel okay about that over PT?
When Trevor watches the game and then says he likes what he sees out of OJ after he, you know, watches like a preseason game.
Does preseason game? I was going to say preseason. Does that count?
Yeah, preseason counts.
Okay.
Because remember, Trevor was the one that set the alarm bells off on Dylan Radins. You know, that Baltimore preseason game a couple years ago, Trevor's like, yeah, he can't play right tackle. And I was like, oh, God. Oh, God. Dustin says the bulk of us want to hear your unvarnished opinions. It's always the loud minority who create a distorted image of an audience. Yeah, there's you know, I think there's one guy out there that wants to hear constant positivity all the time. I think it's only one guy, Ian, but he counts apparently for a huge segment of the population here in Nashville. And so make of it what it is. One texter says, tell it, yell it like it is. It's about practice. And for 95% of us, you're our only link as to what to expect come game time. We can't go to the practices. Thank you. Chris says, we want to hear updates, but it's pointless to get upset about the offensive line with completely new chemistry and an infinitely better coach in BC. I don't know if he's talking about Bill or Brian, but I think in both cases you might
big
be
coach.
Right. as far as the offensive line is concerned. But so you want me to talk about offensive line. So if the offensive line is horrible, like they were supposedly in camp on Saturday, let's say they're horrible tomorrow with the pads on. You want me to tell you the offensive line was horrible. But then you don't want me to sit there and talk about, oh God, what are they going to do? Because if they don't do something about it and the offensive line is horrible, then it's going to be the same result as the last 2 years. Somebody's got to help me out on this. More of your phones next. Lots of them. We'll get to them on the offensive line. And again, wouldn't you be presently surprised if the line's good this year? Like, wouldn't that be a good thing? Like, you'd be so happy. I'd be so happy if the line ends up being good. 615-737-1025 is our phone number here on Stillman & Company. Let's talk Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. I love Hiller. Those guys are fabulous. And for only a couple more days, they are celebrating their 34th birthday. Happy birthday, Hiller. Our friends at Hiller are celebrating 34 years in business this month, and they're bringing the celebration to you with the birthday bash. From now until July 31st, enjoy a free smart thermostat with select new HVAC systems, free water tests, $300 off new tankless water heaters, and buy 10, get 2 free landscape lights. Celebrate Hiller's birthday bash by visiting happyhiller.com today for details. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Happy birthday, Hiller. Proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy. Hiller, call the Happy Face Truck today.
So Coach Bill Callahan comes in here and, a unique situation, getting to coach with his son as the head coach, but he's well known over the league of being a great offensive line coach. I know it's been a short amount of time, but How much have you learned to this point just working with a guy like him?
I mean, I learned a lot. I can't. Like the day I got drafted, I think I called them and asked for the playbook, so I can get right into it. And that was like the start of something I didn't even know how deep it was finna get.
Yeah.
Like I see, like you got one play and you see it on 8 different looks and 8 different calls and all that stuff. So we're talking, and then it's each call has its own set of techniques within it, and then you got the cadence. So we were just talking about the basics, trying to build a foundation with that. And then once we started elevating a little bit above that, talking about, looking at film with Trent Williams, he coached him a little bit, looking at film with him, the greats, Lane Johnson, Taylor Lewan when he was here, guys like that, Laramie Thompson. So we watched film on that just to see like, hey, this is similar technique to what we're doing here on this play. This is what it should look like, and it's being done by a great guy. And he's going down to the intricate of the foot and the ankle angle that you're taking off the ball, uncoiling and all that type of stuff.
There you go. That was JC Latham on with Chase and Big Joe. Now, let me just say this. There is a chance that Bill Callahan can fix all of this. I don't know that I'm going to put all my eggs in the basket. The Titans have clearly done that given the lack of what they've done on the right side of the line. But maybe Bill Callahan is just smarter than the other coaches they've had, and it'll be okay. One texter says, can you just do the right tackle story Tuesday? And your last segment of the day is the interview with Brian Callahan where you tell him the right tackle story. Then we can all know when to turn the radio off. There's some of the crybaby in right there. There's some of the, we don't want to hear about the right tackle anymore. Andrew, I'm so sick of hearing about the offensive line needing time to gel. Anyone who has played football knows that it honestly comes down to whether you can beat your man or not in the end. I do think that the line does need time to gel, but we as football fans, you get 17 cracks at this. That's it. And so you can take your time, but if Will Levis is in a wheelchair in week 4, then you're done. So, you take all the time you need to gel. You can play it your way, but I would have gone out, gotten a right tackle, and said, these are the starting 5 and move on. Eric says, you shoot it straight without blowing sunshine up our keisters. Way to go, Eric. Oh, man. Let's go to Dylan, who's up next here on the program. He's been waiting patiently. Dylan, go ahead.
Hey, Jared. Yeah, this past hour and a half has been great radio. It's the old school Nashville hick guy that made no sense at all. It was so entertaining. But anyway, so I got to thinking, you remember when Derrick Henry had his sit down with Eddie George, it's like, hey, you're good, but you could be really good. You could be great. I kind of feel that's where Jeff is right now in his career. He could be, I don't know if he could be great, but he could be a really, really good player. And I think he's kind of at a come to Jesus moment about it, like Chris Sanders always says, get bitter or get better. I kind of feel like that's where he's at, but I'll hang up and listen. Thanks.
Yeah, I think that while, again, everybody should play for the team and not for the stats, I do think that at some point, Jeffrey Simmons has to go win you games by sacking the quarterback. And he's never recorded 10 sacks. I've got a cut, in the audio archives of Warren Sapp when the Titans were in the market for Jadeveon Clowney, talking about how Jadeveon Clowney's never had 10 sacks in a season. And Warren Sapp said, you can have all the potential in the world and you can almost get 10 sacks, but until you become a 10-sack guy, you can't sit in the club with everybody else. And Jeffrey Simmons, not a 10-sack guy. Justin Madubuike had 13 sacks last year. Chris Jones had 10 sacks last year, and he missed all of training camp and skipped the first game. Quinnen Williams 2 years ago had over 10 sacks. Simmons has a career high of 8.5. So at some point, we keep hearing about Simmons this and Simmons that, and we keep hearing about he's a great leader. And then he goes out there and he's not accountable for him getting mad on Twitter. And I think that the Chris Sanders line is perfectly applicable. Jeffrey Simmons needs to log off the computer or phone and get better instead of being on the phone and getting bitter. Very well said by the caller in reference to what Chris always has to say. You got 2 choices. Get better or get bitter. One texter says, Please talk about something other than the offensive line. I've been in the car for 30 minutes. What else is happening? The offensive line's not blocking. And Levis missed a touchdown to Calvin Ridley because the ball came out of his hand funny, according to Brian Callahan. And Malik Willis looks better. That is supposedly what all is transpiring right now at training camp. But as far as Malik's concerned, if Malik has to play, then something went wrong. Then something went massively wrong, and you're probably not going to have a shot in order to get out of it for whatever reason it may be that Malik is playing. Boy, I tell you, a lot of people get mad at me on the text line talking about how, the reason why the show is more popular is not because it got better. It's because of other okay. I mean, I've learned in life there's just a lot of things I don't have control over. And whether or not the show got better because of me or not because of me, I couldn't tell you that. I can just tell you that every day I wake up, prepare for 4 hours of radio, and then do what we did today, where half the show has been on topics that haven't even been on the grid. When we put the grid together, didn't know Danico Autry was getting suspended for 6 games. Did a topic on that. Didn't know that I was going to get really, really, really mad about the people that pushed back on the offensive line. I figured everybody, and again, I guess some of this is projecting my own feelings, but I just assumed that everybody is sick and tired of the offensive line sucking. And so the idea that 3 days into training camp, the feeling, the sentiment coming from practice is the exact same feeling and sentiment that I had a year ago, I think is kind of crazy. One texter said, if the left tackle, left guard, center, and right guard can be solid, can the tight end and running back help out the right tackle? Yes. That is what the Titans did with Jack Conklin as a rookie. And I know he was an all-pro, but the Titans helped out Jack Conklin as a rookie a lot. They knew he was a rookie. They knew he needed, he was going to have to come along, but they had Lawan, and I believe they had Quentin Spain over there. But again, you can fudge it at guard. Ben Jones, they had brought in as a free agent. They had claimed Josh Klein on waivers to play right guard. So Conklin was the inexperienced one, and they gave him a lot of help. The problem is we don't even know, the left tackle is going to be a rookie, and Conklin was the 8th pick, and he needed help. Latham's going to need some help. Latham's not going to be Trent Williams right away. At least I don't think we can assume that Latham is going to be Trent Williams right away. So he's probably going to need some help. Skoronski last year was abysmal. Now, can the combination of playing with better guys and having Bill Callahan coach him and not having an appendectomy, can all that make it better? Maybe, but maybe Skoronski's just not good enough, which I fear. The center will be fine. But right guard's a mess. Now, all the guys that are competing for the job at right guard are competing for that job because nobody else really wanted them. Brunskill, Sadiq Charles, Radens. I mean, it's not an inspiring group. It ain't Benji Olsen over there. One texter says, they don't have a game Sunday. Relax. Trevor told you that the starting right tackle isn't currently on the roster. Relax. Bill Callahan is better than the offensive line coach they had last year. There's a chance they'll improve over the next 6 weeks. Unlike last year, relax. Again, some of you guys and some people out there, like some people in football, I think, can think like this. Can just throw all the anxiety that they have, or at least the anxiety that I have, about this football season being a lot like last football season, where no matter how good you are or aren't, it doesn't matter because you can't block, so you don't actually know how good you are. That they take that anxiety that I have inside of me, that's just this big old ball, and they just throw it up in the air like throwing up, like when LeBron, throws that talcum powder up in the air during the starting lineups, that they just throw it up in the air and say, Bill Callahan will fix it. And maybe he will.
I'm not sure the starting right tackle not being on this roster makes me feel better, given where we are.
It
in
doesn't
the
make
off
me feel
season.
better.
Training camp. If he's not on the roster right now, like he's going to be behind. He's got some catching up to do.
Well, and not only that, but like how many guys are actually going to be out there when push comes to shove that can start at right tackle for this team right away?
Yeah.
Off of somebody,
Some type of waiver claim. Rankarthon, kind of alluded to, hey, we're 7th in the claim process. We'll plan on taking advantage of that. But
in my head, the Titans have scored on that one time, and it was Josh Klein. And they had the number 1 position on the waiver wire. And that was the one guy. They claimed Josh Klein off of waivers. He was their starting right guard for 2 years, I think. And that was it. Other than that, I can't think of the Dennis Kelly DGB thing. That was a trade, but Kelly was at his best when he was a backup. And like, if we're banking on them finding the next Dennis Kelly, it's like you run the risk of finding the next Dennis Daly. And that's disappointing. Like that is scary. Like that's what gives me all that anxiety that I talk about. One texter says, the truth hurts. Now you're whining and making excuses. Address the truth. What is the truth that I was ignoring? Whatever it may be. 615-737-1025. Speaking of complaining, there was a lot of complaining about something that I didn't even see and something that I'm not sure I even care about. And honestly, I really want to know how much do you actually care about this? Or are you complaining to complain? Like, there's no question about how much I care about the offensive line of the Titans and their success. You know I care about that. That ain't complaining to complain. That's complaining because I'm scared they're not going to be very good. But this, I think people are just complaining to complain. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. And let's give something away because why not? I'm in a good mood. Be caller 5 right now at 615-737-1025. And you will win a pair of tickets to see 30 Seconds to Mars. So good luck. I tell you more about it, but for some reason my iPhone says this message cannot be displayed because a problem repeatedly occurred. So I don't know.
It is a pair of tickets to see 30 Seconds to Mars at Ascend Amphitheater this Saturday.
Good luck. Be caller 5, 615-737-1025, and you are seeing 30 Seconds to Mars. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 The Game.
There's a lot of people saying they're not going to watch the Olympics.
Oh, yeah, a lot of people.
Because of the opening ceremony. Now, I learned a lot about a man named Thomas Jolly, okay, over the weekend. I think we all did. And the one thing that I did not read or see is that he cares at all about sports. So I think that's the biggest thing. Like, we need people that love sports being a part of sports happenings. Whenever sports litigation is happening in government, like trying to change the future of sports completely, we need sports people around. Whenever we have the biggest platform for sports and competition happening once every 4 years, we need some sports people at least there to say, hey, this is a celebration. I understand the history of France had to be told. However, it was told, you do what you got to do. But you got a bruised Statue of Liberty in there. I don't know much about the history of France. I know there's one particular day on a beach that took place that led to a lot of things, so I didn't respect and appreciate that. But there's a lot of people that are saying, hey, what Thomas Jolly put together was incredibly disrespectful. And I think that is certainly a way to view things. That is a way to take it. And there is a lot of people who have said that, and for good reason. And I have no idea how any of these things are the start of the Olympics or to announce that the Olympics are taking place. It was a form of artistic expression that was paying trip, whatever. We just want it to revolve around sport, and we can't have the opening ceremony be a reason why people won't watch these athletes who have sacrificed everything about their lives to be great at something and only get to experience and celebrate once every 4 years.
That was Pat McAfee talking about the opening ceremonies of the Olympics on Friday. Ian, did you watch the opening ceremonies on Friday night?
I did not know.
I didn't either. So when I woke up on Saturday, I put on Twitter, and my God, people were mad. Oh my God. Could you believe in France what they did for the opening ceremonies? It's France. Like, there's a lot of things that happen in France that don't happen around here. So yeah, what happened that was so bad? Well, I mean, they had this dancing and they had this. Okay. And so you didn't like it? I didn't like it, and I'm so offended that I'm not watching the Olympics because of it. So you didn't like the opening ceremonies. Again, I don't know exactly what you didn't like about it. It's your choice. You know, if you don't want to watch because you're mad at the opening ceremonies, that's you. But all I know is on Saturday night, I watched the swimming and I watched the gymnastics, and I'm sitting there watching us in the relay, the women, and I'm like, come on! You know, when Australia, I mean, they beat the crap out of us. I thought we didn't do well in the women's relay when they said that's a USA record. It's just Australia's that good, so tip of the cap to them. But then I watched our men's team in the 4x100 relay just smoke everybody. And I'm like, USA, USA, USA. And guess what? I don't care about the opening ceremonies. It's not holding back how I feel about our swimming performance. Or the guy that was on the high bar. I mean, this guy was incredible Saturday night on the high bar. So you're going to let the opening ceremonies on Friday night, which for my entire life, the opening ceremonies have been so boring. I remember I watched the opening ceremonies in Sydney, Australia. And I'm like, well, is this just people walking around a track with a flag? Yeah. Okay. I mean, I saw the pictures on Twitter of LeBron on the boat holding the flag with everybody around him. I actually thought that was kind of cool. And I'm not even a LeBron fan. You all know that. So I have a bone to people, or I have a bone to pick with people that I feel like are complaining about nothing. The opening ceremonies? Really? Some people vowed. I saw Roy Oswalt, the former baseball pitcher, somebody I have not thought about in a long time, except when I'm playing the Immaculate Grid game and threw a no-hitter for the Astros comes up, and I know everybody's going to want to pick Nolan Ryan, and I'll throw Roy Oswalt in there. He was like, I'm not watching the Olympics after that. Well, why do I give a rat's ass what Roy Oswalt thinks? But just let me say this. If what they did in France, put on by the people of France, people that aren't from this country, if what they did offended you so much that you're not going to watch the Olympics, then aren't you the one that's not being patriotic? I mean, when I watch the Olympics and I root for Team USA And now in my life, I got to root a little bit for Canada, but I'm rooting for Team USA over Canada every time. I mean, I'm rooting for us because I want us to win, because I think we're the best country in the world. And thus, I want us every 2 years, whether it's the summer games or the winter games, I want us to go out there and prove it every 2 years. So if you're not going to watch the Olympics and support your country, to me, that's the thing that's not patriotic, not whining on Twitter about the opening ceremonies out of something that some people out of France decided they were going to put on. That again, I don't know how offensive it was or was. I don't know. I didn't watch it. But I know what I am watching. I'm watching Team USA. Go USA. That is what I told you. That's what I told you on Friday. I said, you can get mad about the state of our country, or you can get mad about where our country is headed, or you can get mad or whatever about whatever it is you want. But I mean, at the end of the day, like, if you're not rooting for Team USA, I think that's kind of unpatriotic. And by the way, the TV ratings have been massive for the Olympics. So I think most people are like me and probably didn't care that much about what happened or didn't happen in France, about what the French people decided. Again, who cares? Who cares what some people in France decided to do to open the Olympics about? It's their Olympics. You want to be mad about something, be mad next or 4 years from now in Los Angeles if we put on a bad, opening ceremony. Somebody said they openly mocked Christianity. That's the problem. Nobody is boycotting Team USA. Okay, well then be mad at them, but don't blame the athletes. And not watching the athletes is about the athletes. And then the other thing, I think Dawn Staley came out, the women's basketball coach, and she said that when they put the team together, Caitlin Clark wasn't good enough to make it, but now they might have to reconsider that Caitlin Clark might be good enough.
It was something to the effect of, if we were redoing the selection process, we would have to strongly consider her after the couple of months in the WNBA and her improvement.
Here's my theory, that maybe other people have had this. I'm not going to claim that I'm the first one to have this opinion.
We have a guarantee about this too we need to watch out for.
Oh, did I say she was going to make it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's over. So I believe that the reason why she's not on that team, and I got the popularity for women's basketball in this country would be times 1 trillion if she was on that team. And it is selfish that she's not on it. But I think that she's not on it because the old hats are mad that women's basketball is now popular. I don't understand it. If I was in that league, women's basketball is a huge part of my life. And I am so happy that it is now more mainstream, more popular, everything. But I think there's a lot of people that have been in this game for a long time that resent the fact that she's the one who's made it popular. And I think that's embarrassingly petty. And I think that it's bad for everybody, that I think it's embarrassing that women's basketball, Team USA, let themselves put their own pettiness ahead of the greater good of the sport for the country. That's embarrassing. By the way, people are mad at me for saying that I didn't care about the opening ceremonies. I didn't watch it. So when you're telling me like what to be mad about, I don't know. I didn't watch it. I don't care. Get over it. That's it for us. We're out of here. Stillman and Company. We'll see everybody tomorrow at 2.